Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 144 for Monday, July 27th, 2026. If you have not heard these voices in a while, that is not unexpected. We've been on hiatus most of the summer, but we are back. My name is Justin Young. Joining me as always is Mario Sanders. Christina Ivy is feeling a little under the weather and is out today. So Mario, how have you been? What did you do on your summer vacation?
I'm good. Summer was good. I went home for quite a while, actually. I think it was about 6 weeks or something like that I was back in California. It was a longer trip than I usually take, but I had 2 weddings and kind of had that as the bookends. And because my feeling was it makes more sense to just sort of make this a longer extended trip, rather than fly there, fly back, fly there, fly back, because that would have been more expensive.
Sure.
But yeah, my stepsister got married at the end of May, and then I had a cousin get married at the beginning of July. And it was good. Like, I think it being long meant that I had enough time to get together with people, friends and family, but also have time to like sit around and just kind of like be lazy and do nothing. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that a lot. I feel like there are a lot of summers where it's like so filled with seeing people, which is obviously great, but then it's like, oh man, that wasn't really a relaxing trip because It was just, I didn't have that like recovery time of all the socializing and interacting. But yeah, it was good. I think the highlight, aside from the weddings, of course, I went to AEW's Forbidden Door pay-per-view, which was in San Jose, and it was pretty phenomenal. I went with my uncle, and like I think I said to you, I don't think I've seen WWE put on a show that good in years, and I don't mean just like shows that I've been to. I mean just like shows that I've watched in general. I think the fact that it was 6 hours and they sustained like a pretty high quality for the entire 6 hours felt pretty amazing. There were not many matches where I was like, oh, okay, like I don't have any interest in this, or like if I didn't have any interest in a match, the progression of the match got me interested in it. And I genuinely feel like the main event of that match, the main event of the pay-per-view, which was the finals, they do AEW does the Owen Hart Foundation tournament in his honor. And I think that's maybe the best match I've ever seen. It's not my favorite match of all time, but just the quality, the storytelling, all of it was really phenomenal. And so, as I've been feeling like I'm at a point where I like have such little interest in the WWE right now, just kind of writ large, that it was really great to like see and like be able to engage with AEW in a extended way that like kind of made me really excited to be a fan of wrestling again.
So let me ask you, I've never been to one of the major pay-per-view events that stretches out over a 6-hour time period.
Yeah.
What is it like in the arena for that 6 hours? Is it a lot of people getting up and going and doing something else? Are people glued to their seats for the 6 hours? How are they keeping that excitement and momentum going? Because that's a long time. Like
it is a long time.
To a baseball game this weekend for 3 hours, and by the 8th and 9th inning, you're getting a little antsy, even if you're a big sports fan.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the benefits of wrestling is that like, yes, it is in many ways a lot of this, like it's 6 hours of wrestling matches, but because you're getting a different style of match, you're getting different people, the stories are different. It provides enough variation, at least for me, I'll say from my perspective, it provides enough variation over the course of that time period that I was invested pretty much the whole time. I was waiting in line to get stuff, and I got to my seat right before the first match started. I think I got up to go to the bathroom once, and but otherwise I was pretty locked in for the whole period. And granted, like, I am also just like a big wrestling fan, so like I could see if somebody was more like a fringe fan, it might start to wear at a certain time. I will say maybe it was like the fourth or third to last match. Like, it was somewhere in like that fifth hour. I definitely felt like my energy was probably at its lowest. And then it picked back up for those final two matches.
I asked because, I watch pay-per-views on TV. I'll watch WrestleMania, like one of the nights of WrestleMania. And, I just find myself drifting at different times. And, and yes, part of that is this is not a very compelling match or something. But part of it is also that's a long time.
Of course. It's a long time to do anything.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like the Super Bowl, right? Like, I never understand the psychopaths who watch all the pregame stuff plus the game. I mean, I understand that if you're with a big group with, food and everything, but like to sit there glued to your seat for that entire time seems like a sort of masochist sort of exercise.
I will say the other thing that was very different, at least in the case of this show, is there is not much downtime. Whereas, like, I could see if you were at WrestleMania for 4 hours and we talked about how many advertisements there were.
Sure.
You are just sitting there doing nothing for an extended period of time.
Right.
But it really was like the match ended, the, wrestlers sort of left to their music, and it was within 15, 20 seconds that next wrestler's music is hitting for them to come out. There wasn't much like, the bantering that happens in the ring or like the behind the scenes segment. Like, it was just like match after match after match. So like I think in that sense, it was also able to sustain its energy in like kind of not letting audiences like go down to like, okay, this is the bathroom break segment for everybody.
Sure.
Like, it kind of just, for me, it kept me engaged all the way through because I knew there wasn't going to be that time where I'm just sitting around like waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it sounds very sort of old school with the programming of the card, right? Because, like a lot of people don't understand about wrestling is like prior to WWF in the 80s, you had all these little regional shows and they might get taped and shown on local television stations. But really, they were programming for the audience there in the arena, so you don't want a lot of downtime.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing is, like, you think about some of, like, the WWE pay-per-views. It might be 3 hours long, and you've got 5 matches, which, I don't know. Like, and I guess my problem with that is, all right, that's 30 minutes or a little bit more per match. But that's not how long each match goes.
No.
Whereas
not these days.
You maybe get 15 minutes, 20 minutes for like, your big matches.
Sure.
This was also not the case. Like, it was 6 hours long, but there were, I think, 13 matches, and most matches, like, they really let them like go. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I'd be willing to bet anything that was on the main card probably got at least 15 minutes. I think the main event was like 35 minutes. The second to last match was 30 to 40 minutes. So like the matches also just like went for, again, they gave the performers like time to really work and tell the story rather than, hey, you got 12 minutes, you got to get in there and get out of there.
Because we're having to fit between commercial breaks.
Exactly. Yeah. So, anyways, I could talk about it for more, but this is not the WrestleCast episode. But it was very good. It was a ton of fun. And if you are at all a wrestling fan, I do highly recommend trying to find at least the Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland main event.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
No, I think that was the big part of my summer. How about for you?
Well, I traveled a little bit. I went down to the Smoky Mountains, which is a favorite location of mine. Lets me do a little bit of hiking and everything. There's something about being up in the mountains and the water running over the rocks and everything, which is a very sort of cleansing like sound for me mentally. Like if I need to go and recharge and everything, so I enjoy that. But then you're in the Smoky Mountains, so you're in the like one of the greatest tourist traps in America. So I found a particular nexus within this tourist trap that fits with, you were just talking about wrestling. You said we weren't going to talk about any more wrestling. I'm going to talk about some more wrestling because in the middle of Pigeon Forge, Tennessee is a small little shopping center, a little strip mall. And in that strip mall is the Nexus of Redneck America condensed, like the most pure form you can imagine of this. So in this one strip mall is the Hulk Hogan shop, which I don't even remember the exact title of it, like the Hulk Hogan Rock and Wrestling Shop. I don't know. Which you go in and there's like first thing you see are John Cena t-shirts, which is very amusing to me that the first thing that they're trying to sell you in the Hulk Hogan shop is John Cena t-shirts. But like there's a Hulk Hogan statue, I guess, outside of the shop before you even get in, like directing you in. Like, and I'm just walking along, I'm like, no kid knows who that is at this point. Like in the 80s, when I was a kid, that would have been like, oh my God, it's Hulk Hogan. And now I'm thinking it's all men in their like 40s and 50s who are like, oh man, Hulk Hogan running up to the statue. But it's John Cena t-shirts, and then it's a whole lot of NWO memorabilia because that's really all that anybody wants of Hogan at this point. Yeah. And then there was an Andre the Giant statue in the back of the shop, like a life-size Andre the Giant statue. And so like that was pretty cool. So there's that. Just mostly t-shirts in there. They had a ring set up, and then they wanted to charge you like $25 to have your picture made in the ring, which it wasn't even a full-size ring. I'm sure it was like some 2x4s with canvas stretched across them or something. So I did not get my picture made in the ring. I do have my picture with Andre the Giant, though. But then you go a few stores down, and there is Cooter's. So Cooter from the Dukes of Hazzard. So right in front of Cooter's, so like there's a Hulk Hogan statue in front of his store. In front of Cooter's is the General Lee with the Confederate flag painted on top of his the roof of the car. So then there's a museum inside there of the Dukes of Hazzard, and they have, I don't know, I guess I'm not 100% sure if they were the real sets from the television show or recreations of the sets from the television show set up inside, but a whole lot of memorabilia and everything from the Dukes of Hazzard, which the Dukes of Hazzard is a fairly benign show except for that one image of the General Lee, right?
Does that take place in Tennessee? Is that Hazard County? That's
Hazard
the whole thing,
County.
Right? I don't know if that's a real place.
Yeah. Is it Georgia? I don't remember.
Okay.
Where
it doesn't matter, but
South.
Yes. That's what I was like. It is the general South, but I don't know if there's a state attached to it.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I should know, but like, when's the last time I watched an actual episode of Dukes of Hazzard? I did watch it quite a bit when I was a kid because it, along with Knight Rider and those sorts of shows, were very exciting for little kids.
Sure.
But anyways, so they have that. Then if you walk down a little further, there's a Trump store in the middle of this. Then there's a Bible museum that's in the strip mall. There was also a Lego minifig museum in there, which was closed, sadly, because that was actually something I was just morbidly curious about. But then in the same parking lot as this, not attached directly to this building, so I don't know if it counts, is the theater where theater is a generous term, is the building where they hold little people wrestling multiple times a week.
Okay.
That is not I am using the politically correct term.
Sure.
That is not the term that they use. All of this, like, people love to be dismissive towards Tennessee, and there are reasons to be dismissive, but like, this was like the most redneck stuff you could imagine, all condensed into like one location. And there was part of me that was like, no, this is bad. Like, which of these places is more offensive and why? Yeah. Like, right. I want to give students that as an essay. Like, what is the more problematic of these locations? All in this like 50 like square feet area. Yeah, there was that, and then a little bit of traveling and everything. Like I said, this weekend went to a baseball game. There's a minor league baseball town over from here. They had $12 tickets, and then one of their big advertisements is that it's all you can eat concessions along with that, which I was not entirely sure what that would mean, but like, you went in and basically you went up to any concession stand and you just asked for something and they gave it to you. No money exchange unless you were buying alcohol. But like, if you were getting a Coke or popcorn or hamburger or something like that. But the thing that really blew my mind is almost immediately there are lines at every concession stand, people lining up for these things. I get up in line and I'm waiting, and I notice it's taking everybody in front of us like several minutes to get their order. And I'm like, what is going on? And then as we got closer, I could see back behind the counter, like, they had food pre-prepared. So like, they had hamburgers and stuff pre-prepared under, like warming.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is going on up here? And so we finally get up. The woman right in front of us just walks up and is like, I want a hamburger. And they hand her the hamburger and they go, you can get your cup there to get a drink. It's like 30 seconds. And I was like, wait, what's going on? And then we get up there and it takes like 30 seconds. I could never figure out what some people were doing that was making this, because like, no money's exchanging hands.
Yeah. You'd think that's the longest part, or making the food, but that's no arena is doing that.
Right. Like, there's like,
not at the time of the game is happening.
Right. There's like 3 options to choose from. Like, what is going on up here? Like, how are you making this into a convoluted, complicated process? And somehow people were managing, and I was really kind of like blown away by that. And it continued throughout the night. So it wasn't even one of those situations you're like, oh, they're kind of backed up because it's the beginning of the game. It's like, nope, all night. This is how it's going to go. And, we went back up a couple of times. We went up and got ice cream at some point. And same thing. We walked up and we were like, can we have 2 ice creams? And the guy like reached back in the cooler and then handed them to us. And we were like, why is there a line here? That took all of like 10 seconds for us to do. Which, again, like, it's sort of the same situation when you get to McDonald's and you get behind the person who's like, I don't know, what do you have here?
That, or I just imagine, if it's families with kids are always taking 3 times as long to actually, even though they know what they want, just getting them to express, I'm sure, as a parent or like, just tell me what you want.
Do you want the hamburger or the hot dog, Billy? Hamburger or hot dog? Those are the only choices. I don't know. Ask for the hamburger. They start to walk away. I really wanted a hot dog.
Well, I think it's free. Just get one of each.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
as the adult, take whatever one they don't want.
They weren't ticketing us. They weren't like, you only have 3 choices.
Yeah. That or like a limited concessions type of thing. You get like 2 free items throughout the night or something like that.
Right. Yeah. No, and they did. I will say they did have the food where they were having to hand it to you. I'm sure that's a sanitation issue. Like they have to hand it to you. They're not. It's not like a buffet. You're walking up taking. But I'm sure that was also partly so. It's not like a buffet. If you've ever been to like a pizza buffet and people go up there and they fill up their plate with like 2 full pizzas on one plate.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's more. You can come back later. You don't have to do it all in one trip, I assure you.
Yeah.
So maybe they would put limits on how much you could get at one trip.
That's true. I could see that being the case.
But no, it was really good.
Nice.
Really good experience and everything.
Yeah, I've never been, but I've always wanted to check out a game over there because it's just so close, and I just assume tickets are probably pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, $12, you can't really beat that for any sort of entertainment.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that does it for our summer shenanigans. So why don't we move into what we've been playing? And of course, we had all summer. We had the Steam summer sale. So I know that both of us have been playing a lot of different things. Mario, what's something that you've been playing?
Yeah. So I didn't really like this game, but I got to talk about it because of just how weird it was.
Okay.
So there's a DS game called Little Red Riding Hood's Zombie Barbecue. And it's like a gallery shooter where you are Little Red Riding Hood or the male option that you can pick at the beginning of the game as well. But why would you pick that?
Is that like the huntsman?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
It's a loose adaptation.
Okay. I mean, I'm just wondering, is this based on anything? Is it based on?
I don't think it's like a movie or anything.
Okay.
It's got I don't know the company that made it. It's got sort of an anime art style.
Okay.
But it eventually each of the bosses are other fairy tale figures. So there's a giant Pinocchio that's a zombie, I guess. Santa Claus.
A zombie Santa?
Maybe. I don't know.
Is everything a zombie?
Not everything, but many things. One of the 3 little pigs has been zombied. So you fight that
Did you eat
pig.
the other 2?
No, the other 2 is one of your allies that is giving you the mission.
So it's brother against brother?
I guess so.
It's the civil war of little pigs?
Yeah, other classic fairy tales like Godzilla is one of your final bosses. Or, non-copyrighted.
Legally distinct.
Legally distinct large lizard. I believe is actually a mecha Godzilla, or legally distinct mechanized lizard. I think the thing that really frustrated me about the game, though, it's very simple. Again, it's on the DS, so you just use the stylus to touch where you want her to shoot the gun. Mm-hmm. But the thing that was really frustrating is it does that thing where you get all the way to the end of the game, and then it says, if you want to really finish the game, you've got to play on the hard difficulty. And it's like, all right, well, and I didn't pick it up again. So I was like, I'm not playing through this entire game a second time. But
I mean, it's a Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, I guess. But I don't know. There are a lot of games that do that, but I think I will always think it's a bad decision for a game designer to do it.
I think it's especially bad if they don't alert you to that
early
when
on.
You start.
Sure. Yeah, if it says at the beginning, you will not get all of this. And it's not it wasn't one of those things where, thankfully, this would have been even worse. If you didn't unlock that until the very end, so you had to play through it twice.
Sure.
So I'll at least give it credit for that. But that to me, it's one of those things don't let me get to the very end. At the very least, there's not much that, Sub-Zero mythologies can be the Mortal Kombat mythologies game that it can be praised for, but it only lets you get like 3 levels into the game before it says, oh, sorry, you got to play on a harder, you got to play at least on normal mode to, get the remainder of the story. But, having played
Excuse me, you can praise the cutscenes.
Okay, sure. Well, I played the N64 version, so you don't get the cutscenes.
What is wrong with you?
So, like I said,
That should be a crime that exists.
I think that it's, I don't know, like similar to the Wizard of Oz JRPG that I played. I think it's very interesting that some company was like, hey, what if we turned Little Red Riding Hood into an apocalyptic zombie game? I respect the ambition, but ultimately it wasn't a great experience overall.
Yeah, I think that's really particularly interesting because I knew for the Game Boy Advance and the DS that there was a whole lot of licensed garbage that came out for those systems.
Sure.
Right? Like that was the era when they were kind of stopping making those for like the mainline home consoles. And it felt like all of that migrated to the portable systems.
Yeah, it felt like I would say I would include the Wii in there, like the Wii, like the shovelware of just like any old nonsense could be put on there. But it does. I think the Game Boy and the DS probably are in that, and that's the same era for sure.
And don't get me wrong, there's like fantastic games for those systems.
Of course.
But like I think there was so much of that coming out. I'm just so unaware. Like if you're like, oh, I played a SpongeBob game, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, of course there were SpongeBob games in that era for those systems. But like, you telling me there's a Wizard of Oz RPG, for that was the DS?
DS.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I ever heard that game came out when it did.
Well, I think that's why it's exciting. Like when I first saw that, I was like, I've got to play that. And when I saw this Little Red Riding Hood game, I was like, all right, that's weird enough that I've got to at least check it out.
Which is why I ask, like, is this based on anything? Because, like, that's like, you sort of go, okay, well, I could kind of see that if it was.
It feels like the Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Like they made all those books, right? Of like, here's classic literature, but we've added zombies to them.
Right.
Like I said, as far as I know, it does not have, this is a one-off thing. I'm sure this company probably made other games as well. I don't know what, but.
They did that movie. Is it called Red Riding? That I feel like Amanda Seyfried is in that.
That sounds right.
It's like a horror sort of take on that, but not these modern horror fairy tales. Like there's a new Pinocchio movie that. That's like a horror film, but like it was kind of more of a. It was trying to be like high end, like sort of horror take on that at the time. So that's why I was asking, was it like an adaptation related to anything? Because, I mean, I guess, that's public domain, so you can just make it. Yeah. It doesn't cost a dime.
Yeah, I mean, this is the publisher also published, I mean, none of these games. I mean, some of the Unreal tournaments, I guess.
Yeah.
Gianna Sisters.
Oh,
if that gives you any sort of indication. Also, the DS version. And the developer is called Gamic, Gammick. They don't. Designed by Gamic and developed by Spanish studio Enjoy Up.
Okay.
Anyways, it was a weird game. It's one that's like, I think it is worth, like, if you sound morbidly curious, watch a video of it. But yeah, it was, other than that, that's all I could say. I figure like this was weird enough that I want to at least mention it. Because, there are other games that I played that's like, all right, Alicia told you enough about Ace Attorney that I don't need to talk about it anymore.
I was just going to jump in here real quick.
Yeah, please.
The movie is titled Red Riding Hood. It actually has Hood on. It is Amanda Seyfried and Catherine Hardwicke, who did the first Twilight film,
Okay.
directed it, did that film 13, which is actually a really good film. And I remember that was mid 2000s or something that film came out.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any sort of crossover.
No,
between
I
those.
don't think it does.
I know that's not what you're saying, but there was a period of time where that is what a lot of movies were.
Right.
The most recent thing that I played was Twisted Metal Black for the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
I've never played a Twisted Metal before, or at the very least, I haven't played a Twisted Metal since like an elementary school YMCA boys' night sleepover from the PlayStation 1. But
good that the YMCA is doing its job.
Yeah.
Teaching young people about Sweet Tooth.
Yeah. Twisted Metal and Tony Hawk were like classic. The elementary school I went to had a YMCA, and every once in a while they would do sleepover nights, and those were the classic boys sleepover night games. Yeah, so like I said, I had never played it. I think I mentioned earlier in the year on the podcast that at the beginning of the year, I made a top 100 of my favorite games of all time. And I had a number of friends who also made that list. Like after seeing mine, they made their own top 100 lists. And so since then, I picked 3 games from each of those lists and have decided to play them. And Twisted Metal Black was the first one. A friend had it as his 9th favorite game of all time. And so I went and played through it. That game is really hard, which sounds like it's just like that's what the Twisted Metal games are. They are just difficult games, or at least there's a big learning curve to them. But I had a lot of fun with this game after I started to get the hang of it. I think that's one of the things that I appreciated a lot was genuinely feeling myself get better at the game as time was going on. And I think a game like that is well suited to giving that feeling as compared to like a Final Fantasy or any sort of RPG. Like you don't know if you're getting better, if you're just getting stronger, but this, you are at the same power level, but like you get better strategizing against the computer opponents. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's one that I would definitely return to. There's like a lot of lore for that game. And so I would go through and I would play. Well, I would definitely see myself playing through another character's playthrough. I played as Sweet Tooth. I kind of felt like he is the face of the franchise. So, yeah, it was cool.
So have you seen any of the TV show?
I've not.
Okay.
I've heard it's better than people assumed it was going to be. Yeah,
it is. It's like I watched the first season. I haven't watched any beyond that for no particular reason other than I just haven't gotten around to it. But that first season, I was kind of shocked. Okay, this works much better than I would have anticipated.
I mean, the only 2 people I guess that I know are in it are Anthony Mackie and then Samoa Joe / Will Arnett. So you've got pretty good performers at the very least. I mean, Anthony Mackie is very good. And Will Arnett, I imagine, does well with the voice acting, and Samoa Joe is literally his job to be a big, strong, imposing guy. So I could see just for that reason, it's probably worth giving it more credit than I know I was giving it when it first got announced.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's one of those properties that seems really difficult to adapt into a series. Particularly, you could imagine that as a film, maybe easier than a series, but they did a good job with it. The Twisted Metal's an interesting franchise because that whole genre of the car combat games has basically died.
Yeah, I don't know really what else exists. I know the N64 equivalent, it might have been on other consoles too, but it's the one I'm most familiar with. It's the Vigilante 8 games.
Yeah.
But Twisted Metal seems like the pinnacle of that franchise, of that genre, I should say.
Well, I mean,
most readily recognizable, I guess.
They made Crush Hour, the wrestling one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's the other thing that surprised me. There are so many Twisted Metal games.
Yeah.
a shocking amount of Twisted Metal games that exist.
Yeah, because I think there's 4.
There's
1 through 4 on the PlayStation, and then they did the mini one.
Yeah. I think there's 2 or 3 on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
There's a couple on like the handheld systems of like the PSP.
There's Black, and then there's one just called Twisted Metal.
Yeah. So, yeah, like it's a franchise I've always been aware of. And when I saw, and this friend loves that franchise, he had multiple games on his top 100. This one happened to be the highest ranked of the franchise. So that's why I chose it. But it was like, I'm glad to be able to say that, like, okay, like feel like I can speak to really having experienced the franchise. And yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it enough that I would definitely return to it.
Twisted Metal 1 was one of the first games I owned on the PlayStation.
Oh, yeah.
It was that and Warhawk were the first 2 games I owned on the PlayStation. Mostly because, like, for Christmas, I was given a PlayStation that included what's the racing game? The Namco racing game. I can't think of its name now. Anyways, it included that as a pack in, and
like Gran Turismo.
No.
Okay.
I can only think of Rave Racer, which is the later game in this franchise. Anyways,
not Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer.
Oh,
Yes,
okay,
yes,
okay.
yes. The original Ridge Racer. I could not think of the word Ridge for whatever reason. But yeah, Ridge Racer, and then that PlayStation did not work. And we had to take it back to the store, and this was post me believing in Santa, so it was okay. And we had to take it back, and they didn't have the bundle with the pack-in anymore. So I got Twisted Metal because I had to have some game to play on it.
Sure, yeah.
So I got that in Warhawk, and I remember being very excited about both of those. And both of those have like full motion video cutscenes, like telling the story and everything in very kind of fun ways. But I remember liking that game quite a bit. It's just kind of weird, like we don't make those games anymore, those car combat games, and you sort of feel like with online play now they would make a whole lot of sense, but like
what's I say, like those that again, maybe it's the YMCA, but that feels like such a classic couch game.
Right.
The split screen of 4 or 2 or however many people are playing, and now that you could do it online and you could have a full screen,
right,
it seems like a great franchise to try again or bring back.
I think one of the fundamental problems with it is that like that kind of works really well in single player, but I wonder in multiplayer, like multiplayer games always sort of devolved into get behind this guy and then just unload on them like all of your weapons, right? And if you could be the first person to get behind the opponent, then basically you won. And so I wonder if playing a modern version of that, it just wouldn't work.
Maybe. I mean, that is definitely possible. I will say I struggled to do that in this game, like just get behind a guy and like camp forever, because the game is so fast.
Right.
There's a part of me that I was like, is something wrong with the settings? Because it feels like it shouldn't be this fast, but that game just... So it's one of those things that it felt like you could definitely get behind somebody for a period of time, but like I could never sustain it for very long.
I mean, because ideally what you would want in that game is to be able to sort of free fire 360 degrees while you're driving, right?
Yeah.
But being able to drive while shooting somebody behind you is not like actually practical, like to do that with a controller, right?
Yeah.
That's way too complicated to manage that at the same time. I know somebody's going to say, no, you could have a button for backfiring, but I don't mean just backfiring. I mean being able to aim somebody's at like 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
How do I aim and hit that person?
You'd have to make it like a twin stick shooter, and so it'd like have to be top down. But then that becomes even more awkward to some extent.
Right, and that's a very different game when it becomes a top-down shooter.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, because you can backfire in the at least in Black,
Right.
but it's like a button combo. It's like a fighting game that you start playing at that point. And so, yeah, I mean, with how deeply like lore heavy Twisted Metal Black is, I'm surprised they haven't tried to bring it back. That seems like one of those franchises that, you know, hey, let's make a new Twisted Metal that like Sony or whoever owns it at this point would want to try. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, apparently they were working on one for the PlayStation 5.
Oh, really?
Like in conjunction with the series when the series was in development.
Well, that makes sense.
And it got canceled. I believe the Destruction All-Stars team was maybe working on that.
Okay.
Of course, that game kind of flopped when it came out, which makes you kind of wonder, should they have just done Twisted Metal first and skipped doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, there's something going on that's stopping that from happening because that was a big genre in that era, the sort of 32, 64-bit era, and then it's just completely gone away.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like, and I think the thing that's so interesting is that it's completely gone away when Rocket League is so popular, right? Because like those games are not, I mean, like it's obviously very different, but you could see how you could just put that on top of what already exists of Rocket League and make a game from that. And with Rocket League's popularity, I feel like there would be some amount of interest in that, but maybe not.
Yeah, and I wonder with Rocket League, if you slap weapons on top of that, like I said, does that become too complicated to actually like manage?
Oh, I think if you have the soccer element as well, I think it becomes too complicated.
Well, even
to
without,
manage,
even without the soccer element.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just thinking of how like that game controls and everything. Like,
I've never played Rocket League, so but like watching people play it, especially like watching people play it well, like it's like pretty masterful. Like how
there's a high ceiling on the skill level of that game.
You can tell how intricate the movement is watching somebody who's like average or bad, and then watching somebody that's very good. The way that they can just like. It's like watching.
You can call me out more blatantly if you want.
I have not watched you play that game, but it is. It's like watching Messi go up against the local pub player.
Yeah, I mean the people who in that game who can jump in the middle of the field, flip, hit the ball, and like aim it into like the upper left corner of the net are like amazing to me. Like, I think that game's really great, but like yeah, my skill level is not that high. No, it's interesting because I've thought a long time about why is that franchise dead? Because that was so like that was on the Mount Rushmore of PlayStation franchises.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like particularly for the PlayStation 1 generation, that was one of their key franchises. And
I just said we made 4 games for it.
Yeah, and for that to completely be gone, basically by the end of the PlayStation 2 generation, that franchise was dead.
Yeah, I think they made one for the PlayStation 3, but that's 2 generations ago at this point.
That sounds right, but but like even then, like that was like them. We're trying to revitalize this franchise. And it's kind of amazing to think like, how could it be this big of a franchise and just be non-existent today?
Yeah.
Or even something like Vigilante 8 or even, the other various like spinoffs and like sort of clones that they did. There was like a Star Wars car battle game that they did. Where you're driving around like land speeders and stuff, for that to just be completely gone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think about like, the battle parts of like Mario Kart were like such a big part of growing up, and like I don't think there's anything like that in Mario Kart world. There might be a battle mode. I have not played it, but
there was an 8. But
there was an 8 for sure.
I don't know. tells you my interest level for World.
I guess.
I don't think I ever even touched that mode if it's there.
Same.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I most want to talk about, I think.
Okay, cool. All right, I played a few different things, and some things I'll wait for a future episode to talk about. But I wanted to talk about Mina the Hollower. So this has been one of the, I feel like, big releases of the year so far. Mina the Hollower is sort of, talking about the Game Boy Advance, this is sort of a, I guess, Game Boy Color might be the right sort of era. I feel like it's one of those games that's going for a retro style and aesthetic that hovers somewhere between two platforms.
Yeah, it feels like the Game Boy Color Zelda games, the Oracle games. Yeah.
Like, or even Link's Awakening, the
Sure.
the color, the DX version,
Yeah.
I guess is what it is on there. Probably looking like those games, but more playing akin to a more modern Game Boy Advance style game, and just the size of the world and the intricacies and stuff of it. So you play as Mina, who is a hollower, so you can dive down under the ground and sort of burrow under the ground. And when you come up, you will like kind of get an extra boost jump. So you have to like learn to use those movement skills to sort of navigate the world and everything. And it is, very much like a sort of Zelda game. There are different dungeons that you have to go to and complete to acquire items so that you can eventually get to the final part of the game. This is from the people who did
Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight, yeah. Yacht Club Games is their name. And I am very torn on this game because it is an amazingly intricate and deep game. The amount of content in this game is sort of staggering for like a small indie game, a $20 game that you pick up and everything. It is incredibly, not just that the levels are very complex and everything, but like just the deepness and the amount of secrets and things to explore within the game is really quite sort of overwhelming at times. And I think the combat is very interesting. And so like you have different weapons that you acquire, and then you can upgrade those weapons. You have different items that you can acquire throughout the game. And so there's just a lot of ability to sort of play this game the way that you want to play it, at least when it comes to combat within the game and everything. I think the problems that I have with the game are tie back to that sort of retro vibe that they're going for with the game. And this is something that I sort of often find with these modern games when they're like, we're going to make a game that's like a 16-bit game or like an 8-bit game. And like, if you're trying to copy the look of those games, that's one thing. But in the process, they often try to copy a lot of how those games play. And we don't make games like that anymore, often for a good reason. So like one of the things in this game is that it forces you into, you can attack in the 4 cardinal directions, right? So if you want to, like you get a whip, if you want to use that whip, like you can go up, down, left, or right attacking. You can't go at an angle. If you're standing at an angle of a boss and you're fighting them, you can't hit them. You have to move to the north so that you can then attack them to your right. And it's just, that feels incredibly cumbersome. Like, and I know like people go, well, that's how Zelda is. And it's like, yeah, but like we don't make Zelda games that way anymore.
Yeah.
right? Like even Nintendo, when they make a 2D style Zelda game, don't make it play like that anymore, right? And one of the reasons we don't is because that's incredibly frustrating, right? And usually games were designed that way at the time because of technical limitations.
Sure.
Those weren't like choices. And so when you go back and make a game today like that, it feels like you're making a game intentionally limited, and you're kind of the entire time going, but why are we doing it this way? So one of the other things the game does is there's no map in it. You do acquire a map at one point, but then the map is like one of those maps you would get in an instruction manual where it's like, this area is to the east, this area is to the west, but like it's no more detailed than that. And you're like, well, that, I guess, somewhat useful.
Similar to like the A Link to the Past, like overworld map, where it's like you got a general idea, but nothing is actually distinct within it.
Right. And the map of this game is so intricate. It's so like sort of twisting in on itself at times and everything, that it's sort of forcing you to learn the layout, which I'm not entirely against, but like that becomes incredibly frustrating when there are areas you can't access right now and you have to come back later to access them when you've got an additional ability.
Sure.
So, it's sort of like making a Metroidvania and looking at the original Metroid and going, well, it doesn't have a map, so we're not going to include a map in here. And it's like, the original Metroid doesn't have a map because of technical limitations at the time.
Yeah.
As soon as they could put one in with Super Metroid, they put one in. When they remade Metroid as Zero Mission, they put a map in it.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a lot of things throughout this game that are just incredibly, I think, frustrating from that design perspective.
Sure.
That as I was playing it, I kept going, this is more annoying than it is fun. This isn't adding anything to my experience playing this game. And so I think this game is really good in a lot of ways. I also think it's like painfully hard. It's the sort of game, it's battle wise, design wise, in the way that you fight, particularly bosses, but even through some of the general enemies, it is much more like a Souls game.
I remember from the demo it being very hard.
And so you should expect to die an awful lot in this game, particularly against bosses. You should expect, 20 deaths in some situations. And so it's a game I have a hard time recommending because I think for the people who are going to get this game and like it, I think, and there's been a lot of people already saying this is one of their game of the years, and I completely get that. But I think there's a lot of people who are going to play this game and they're just going to be mad.
Yeah.
And
it's like Hollow Knight in some ways of like that game is, some people just want to blanket recommend it to everybody. And it's like, no, that's not a game for everybody. I don't mean that. That's not a dismissive thing towards some people. It's just like, that's not a game that everybody's going to be able to get behind.
No, it's not. And I think that's a big problem for the game. And I say that as somebody who likes the game, but I like it with a lot of reservations to liking it. I think the game has a very sort of simple story that as it goes becomes pretty interesting. And I think it does some fun things with the story by the end. So I did beat the game. But, so I think by the end, it does some very fun stuff with the story. There are things that you're going to very early in the game go, I know exactly where this is going, and you're right. But along the way, it does some fun things with it. And so, I would recommend it, but recommend it with quite a few caveats. And I think, if you played the demo, you probably have a pretty good idea whether you're going to like this game or not.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that demo is still available. If it is, I would recommend people play the demo first.
Yeah.
To figure out if they think they're going to like it. But neat game, just some baffling design decisions that I wish people would stop making when they try to make a quote unquote retro game. I mean, if you're going to do that, do UFO 50, where like you make these games frustrating because you're actually making a game that would have come out at that time.
Yeah.
But like this game, you're making a game that is not a game that would have been released on the Game Boy Color.
You're trying to like do a both and
Yeah.
when you need to just like pick a lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's me on the holler. I picked up Funko Fusion because it was $2 on the Steam summer sale, and it has like Back to the Future and He-Man segments. I think there's a Jaws segment in it. And I was like, $2 is sort of like a Lego game. I can probably get $2 worth of enjoyment out of this game. I did not get $2 worth of enjoyment out of this game. There's a lot of free DLC available for it and everything. There's a lot of paid DLC for it. But like this game is a train wreck of a game. So it very much wants to be one of the modern Lego games, right? So your Lego Star Wars, Lego Harry Potter, that style. But it's multiple different properties in one game. So you, at the beginning, are selecting which one you want to start with and eventually getting through multiple different properties. But like what you're doing actually in the game levels is just so frustrating. Like I was playing the He-Man one, and it puts you're in Eternia, and so you're like getting out of Castle Grayskull. So you have to solve puzzles just to get out of Castle Grayskull, but that's pretty simple. You get out, and then you get to this area where you're having to fight enemies, but you're having to recharge these different tires that sort of look like Castle Grayskull. And it's never quite clear exactly what you're trying to do. And the enemies are always attacking you while you're trying to do things. And it's just a frustrating mess. And as I was playing, I was like, this is ostensibly a game made for kids. Mm. And I can't imagine the frustration a kid playing this game and just going, I don't want to play this anymore. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of confusing while playing it because, like, you have this very, like, known properties that you're, peppering the game with and everything. Like, Shaun of the Dead is part of this game. There's levels for. And you're like, this should be a really easy pick up and play game, one I don't have to think a lot about and everything. And you're making this not just complicated, but frustrating in its complication. And so I did not play very long. I very strongly do not recommend that game, even at $2. Pick up one of the Lego games. Even if you're like, I'm all Legoed out, surely this offers something different. It does, but nothing as good as those Lego games. And I'm not even the biggest fan of those Lego games. Once you've played one of them, you've played them all.
Yeah. But
like this one is pretty bad. And the last thing I'll talk about here is Densha Attack. Mm-hmm. So this is the train racing trick game that I talked about earlier on a podcast episode this year. I played the demo of it. This is like if you took a Dreamcast era game like Jet Set Radio and you mixed it with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Ollie Ollie and a little bit of Sonic Adventure and mixed all those together, and this is the game you would get.
And Lionel Traintown.
Yes. It feels very much like somebody said, let's make a Dreamcast game. Mm. And so, there's a certain amount of catnip in that for me as a big fan of that era of games. This is a really like weird and kind of difficult game to talk about because so you are controlling a train. That train you have to control as it goes down the tracks. So you have to drift around corners. So you have to hold down the shoulder button as you go into a corner, and then you have to release it halfway through the corner, and you get a boost. then there are objects on the train tracks that you either have to jump over, or you have to move to a parallel track running alongside you. So that's all part of the gameplay. But then it introduces tricks as you're going along too. So you have these sort of combos that you have to learn. So you're moving like, the stick to the left and doing a quarter turn and hitting the button. So very sort of Street Fighter or Tony Hawk.
Sure.
And so then you're combining all of this into runs through levels where you are trying to not only get the fastest time, but you're trying to get the highest trick score as you go through. But all of this is on train tracks. So part of the challenge of the game is to not go flying off the train tracks, because you can jump and you'll just go completely off the train tracks into the surrounding environment. And then it resets you to the last checkpoint. And so part of the challenge of the game is managing these sort of controls all at the same time, and while watching the track and seeing what's coming up, and can I afford to jump at this point and try to do a trick, because there's enough straightaway, coming up that I'm not going to go off an edge of a corner here.
Yeah.
And so it works. That works, but it is extremely challenging to get your mind around the controls. One of the movements that you learn is you can actually, when you're in the air, force your train to sort of like slam down, which is sort of like, that's a move in Tony Hawk and everything, where you can slam your board down, you can slam your train down. So sometimes you'll go over a ramp, and you have to do that because you're about to go through a tunnel. So before you hit the mountain that you're going to go through the tunnel, you have to do that. So that's all neat. And I think the game would be neat just with that. But what really kind of sells the game is the level design. And there are a lot of levels in this game. And as you're going through and hitting these different levels, the levels get progressively wilder and more over the top. So they start off pretty simple. You're going through the countryside on this train track and everything. And then you start getting into cities, and you're having to honk your train horn to make the construction workers swing their wrecking balls so that they knock over a building. And so then you have to jump over that building and then switch tracks quickly. And then there are parts in it where like you land on a boat, and now all of a sudden you're controlling the boat out at sea, but you're still going over ramps, and you're going up on like a wave half pipe and doing tricks off of it. Like suddenly it's a surfing game, and every level is introducing, it feels like just about is introducing these sort of like quirky little things that you're doing that sort of mix up and change the gameplay. And then each level has a series of unique tasks to it. So one of the levels says, blow all the papers off the desk. I don't know what that means. Okay, so at one point, the train tracks take you up through the middle of an office building. As you go through, you have to hit your horn to blow all the papers off the desk, the cubicles of the workers and everything. And all of this is going on at super high speed. So it always feels like chaotic, and that you're just managing and hanging on by the skin of your teeth. And none of it feels like it should work, and yet somehow it does. And probably the worst thing about this game, the most negative criticism I can give it, is in between the levels, there's a storyline going on, and it's told in this very sort of kind of like anime style. I think a lot of that doesn't work as well as the look in the actual gameplay. But I at least like that they're trying to do something. They're trying to insert this story and like make it matter and everything. I don't think the dialogue is ever as clever as it needs to be and that sort of thing. But the actual gameplay of this is fantastic. And, like, I think I would recommend it. It feels very challenging at first to get into, but like once you get into it and you start getting into the groove of how to play it, I think it's really a whole lot of fun. And so, like I said, I mentioned some of those games earlier. If any of those games sort of appeal to you, I think this is a game that might appeal to you, particularly if you like the sort of aesthetic and look and style of it.
Yeah, I know this was pretty highly anticipated. I mean, I know you had talked about it on a podcast, but like it's popped up on a lot of like different feeds that I follow of like, oh, the game's finally coming out. And so it always looks crazy. And, but I haven't actually like sat down and engaged with it any more than just like the briefest little, I don't know, reel or something that I'll see.
They did have a demo this summer. I'm not sure if that demo is still up on Steam. If it is, I might suggest download the demo and just see first, how does this feel for you? Does this feel like something you'd be interested in? But yeah, this is some of the most fun I've had playing a game this year. And like I said, it feels like a game that shouldn't work. And I think it is right on the edge of not working, but it's just enough on the inside where I'm like, I think it's a little frustrating at times because it maybe isn't working exactly how you want, right? Like if you go in too much with a Tony Hawk mentality, you're going to be frustrated because you're wanting to chain tricks together. Like this game has a manual in it. You can land the train on its nose and grind as you're doing it. And so you kind of want to play it like a Tony Hawk game where you're just doing one long chain throughout the level, but that's really difficult because you're having to go around the curves at the same time. And so you can't just jump willy-nilly whenever you want. You really have to pay attention to the layout of the track. But, like I said, I'm having a lot of fun with it. If, it has that sort of blue sky Dreamcast look to it. If that's really appealing to you, like I think it's a cool game and it's worth trying out. All right, well that does it for what we've been playing. So why don't we move on into the news? And since we've been essentially away from doing this podcast for a couple of months now, nothing significant has happened in that time in the game industry. So there's probably not a whole lot for us to talk about, but we thought we'd do at least a recap of some of the big news that's happened. We're not going to get into everything. We're not going to talk about everything that happened at Summer Games Fest and all of that.
Yeah.
There are places for you to go get that news if you haven't already. But we'll talk about some of the big headlines. And we'll start with something positive, which is that Nintendo announced the Zelda Ocarina of Time remake that sort of got leaked before Summer Games Fest, along with the Star Fox remake. Obviously, once that Star Fox remake officially got announced, we kind of thought, okay, that Zelda remake is probably real as well. Come to find out it was. We got the briefest of glimpses of that. But we did get a 2026 release date for it. So that game is supposedly coming this fall, even though all we saw were like 2 seconds of the actual game.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I don't know. I guess I have mixed feelings about it just because I just wish they would make the like already existing game like available for people to play. But I know that that's not going to happen, or like that they would just promote that already exists. I don't think it needs to be remade. I'll put it that way.
They have Nintendo Switch Online. It's on there.
I don't want to pay $70. I just want them to make something new.
You want to be able to buy it for $5, $10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I am very interested to see what they do with it.
Right.
Right. Like it's one thing. All right. This is gonna potentially make the Star Fox fans upset. It's one thing to remake Star Fox 64
for the fifth time.
Ocarina of Time is like widely considered to be maybe the greatest game of all time.
Sure.
Remaking it is a bold move for sure because you can't get it wrong. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like getting it wrong would be a terrible misstep.
We should say they have remade it slightly before in the 3DS version.
That is more of a remaster, I think, than a full remake, though.
I agree.
And so
some updated graphics.
I will be interested to see, and I guess what I mean is like, what do they add? Because I think that there's a lot that would understandably get added to this game.
Right.
I think the other thing that I'll be interested to see what Nintendo does is like, as a 32-year-old, Ocarina of Time is not scary. But as like a 9-year-old,
right,
there are moments in that game that are genuinely terrifying.
Yes.
And I will be interested to see what they do with those moments. Like, do you make the Shadow Temple as scary as it probably is?
Right.
Do you make the re-deads and like, you know, all the stuff that you do in the graveyard, like as scary as it like possibly or probably should be to really capture what that game was in 1997 or whenever it came out.
Right.
So, like I said, I will be very interested to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, I think when the rumor leaked, that was one of the things we talked about. Like, is this going to be more of a straightforward, like, is this a remake or is it a reimagining?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how far are they going to stray from that original game?
Yeah.
Are we just going to get a substitution of graphics?
Yeah.
You know, essentially what the Star Fox remake was this summer.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they went in, they redid all the graphics, but that game is essentially still Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
Like, they have not added not anything significant. You know, they added some new cutscenes in between levels. They redid the graphics, but it plays very similarly to the original Star Fox 64. And so do you do that with Ocarina of Time? So is it essentially a new coat of paint on it? And that makes sense to an extent, right? Because there are people who have never played that game now. Or do you try to do something more significant? Do you try to reimagine that game more significantly?
Like in 2026, right? Like if you were making this game original in 2026, that game is going to be very different than the 90s release.
Right. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody thinks it's going to be on the level of the Final Fantasy VII remake, right? It's not going to be a complete reimagining of the game because that would be insane. Nintendo, you know, there were people who did, like, are they going to take the Tears of the Kingdom engine and basically use that to remake? And I don't think it's going to be anything.
No, I don't think
different.
I don't think it will be that either.
But I think you're right. Like, there are things in that game that feel very dated now, like the jump mechanics.
Sure.
The fact that game, you do not have a jump button. You auto jump, right? Like, that made a whole lot of sense when that game originally came out, but it probably doesn't make any sense now.
Sure.
So do you add a jump button to that game? And how much does that change that game when you can jump anywhere?
Yeah. I mean, probably a lot. I just think about like doing like the randomizers and watching speed runs of it. Like, being able to jump in that game would be crazy. Like when and where you want to.
And then does that mean you have to change the design of some of the levels, right? If you can jump from anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, that is one of those games that these sort of low visual quality, and like this is not a slight against the Nintendo 64. All games of that era don't hold up nearly as well.
Sure.
Right? Like, that 32-64-bit generation do not hold up visually as well as the 16-bit generation does.
If you like the way they look, that is nostalgia talking.
And I would say a lot of those games, you don't like the way they look. You like the way you remember them looking.
Sure.
Right? Like, you go back and you play them and you're like, oh my God, this game looks bad. I think a lot of people discover that about Star Fox 64.
Sure.
Right? Like, that is a rough game to go back and play today. You know, the gameplay still holds up decently well, but like the look of that game is pretty rough.
Yeah.
Now.
Everything is very polygonal.
Yeah. And
for understandable, that's also not a knock against the console or the developers or anything.
And there's that Vaseline smear on pretty much all Nintendo 64 games, right? Looks like somebody rubbed Vaseline on your television screen. Everything's blurry, out of focus to some degree. So, yeah, like part of what you talk about, like, you know, that there are parts of that game that are kind of scary. Part of that worked at that time, one, because a lot of games weren't scary. And two, because it was the first time a lot of people were experiencing 3D, like a 3D world. You know, the idea that the enemies are coming from behind you and like can grab you and this sort of thing. Like, you know, like people hadn't experienced that in a 3D environment previously. And so how do you convey that same sort of feeling today in high definition, in 4K graphics and everything? How do you convey that without making it absolutely terrifying? How do you convey that level? Because, you know, there's an element of horror to that game.
Oh, I think about like the Skulltula house of like the family that has been body horrored into spiders.
Yeah.
That are like still sort of humanoid as well.
Yeah. And like, so how does Nintendo convey that?
Yeah. For a game that I assume they're going to want everybody to play, like they're going to go for an E rating, I have to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. But, you know, how do you not make that so cutesy that it loses that horror aspect when you can make very sort of realistic graphics?
Yeah.
You know, and
the graphics don't look like super realistic, like from what we saw. Like there's definitely a cartoonish element to them, you know, but that doesn't mean that you can't still, like, it's not Wind Waker cartoonish.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, how do you recapture that vibe? Right. How do you recapture the vibe of stepping out into Hyrule Field for the first time?
Yeah.
Like the sort of majesty of stepping out into that is, if you did not play that game at the time of release, it's a little difficult to recapture that playing it today, because you're like, okay, this is a big open area.
Yeah, compared to right, like people who are playing it for the first time are going to be comparing it to walking out the first time in Elden Ring.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Or Skyrim.
Yeah.
Or, you know, something of that. And, you know, like, you know, there have been people who are like, okay, are they going to expand Hyrule Field to give it more of that majesty, you know, to give it that more of that wow factor that it had originally?
Well, that's why I wonder, like, what if are they going to add to it? Because, like, generally speaking, again, it's an N64 game. That game is pretty small. Like the world, I guess the world is small.
Yes.
They do a good job of making it feel really big, but like comparatively, it's tiny to any game that comes out today.
Yeah, I mean, you compare that entire game world to a single level of Mario Odyssey.
Sure, yeah.
And like they're more comparable than you would imagine. Right? Yeah. And yeah, like what is that game like today? Like, how do you make that game appealing, I guess, to a 12-year-old today? You know, like it was very appealing to 12-year-olds of that era. Like, I mean, I was high school, I guess, when that game came out originally. But you would have been like elementary school.
I don't even think that game came out like 96, 97,
98 maybe.
Okay, I was like 4 or 5.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so very young. Yeah. So like, I mean,
I did not grow up playing that game. Like I was like that game had been out for a decade the first time I had played it.
Okay. Well, even a decade, like you're 14, 15, so you were playing it around the closer to my age,
Sure.
high school age. Yeah, like that. Like, how do you recapture how that game felt? And I think that's the problem.
But I get yes. Anyways,
What?
the first time I played it was on the GameCube collection of it.
Oh, okay.
The port.
And I think that's the problem with something like this, right? How do you recapture how it felt? Because so much of the nostalgia for that game is how it felt to play it originally.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difficulty, I think, with Mario 64 at this point, going back and doing any sort of remake of that. The issue would be, but how do you recapture what it felt like to even just see Mario 64 for the first time? Like, that was, people, it's difficult today to understand how mind-blowing that game was to see the first time.
Sure.
And Zelda the same way. Like,
Sure.
those games blew people's minds when they first saw them.
Yeah.
And they were so much, say what you will about the PlayStation won out in the long run that generation, right? But those two games were so far ahead of anything comparable to them.
Yeah.
Say what you want about Croc, but there was nothing on the PlayStation that ever reached that level of Mario 64, and that's what they came out of the gates with.
Maybe Final Fantasy VII, but that's
or a different genre.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid, but like that's about it.
Yeah, those are different genres.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Resident Evil. Yeah, I mean, I understand there are comparable games, but like not in that genre.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, nobody did a 3D platformer.
Sure.
And I would say the same about Zelda, right? Like nobody did a 3D adventure game.
Sure.
That generation that compared really to it. And so I don't know how you recapture that. I think they did a very good job from what I've seen. I haven't played it, but I did play the demo of that Star Fox game. I think they did a very good job with it, but that's just a new coat of paint.
Yeah, and that game only cost $50. Yeah. Whereas this one, I think, has already been announced, either being $70 or $80, whether you buy it digitally or physically. And if you're asking people to spend potentially $80 on a game, I think it needs to be more than a coat of paint.
Yeah, and like you said, Star Fox has never had the reputation that Ocarina did.
Yeah, or just being Ocarina with like 2026 quality of life added to it.
Right, like, yes, are you going to improve the water temple? Yeah, you absolutely should.
Yeah, and I assume like they'll do something they did for the 3DS version. So unless they like fundamentally change the dungeons, which I could potentially see them doing, making them bigger or more grandiose or whatever. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, and not to oversell it or anything, but like you are attempting a remake of one of the Mount Rushmore of games to some degree, right? Like, say what you will, this is the Citizen Kane of games.
And I think it's still like the highest rated game of all time on like Metacritic, which again, like take that for what you will, but like that does mean something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying it's necessarily the best game ever made, but like it is a very important game.
Yeah.
It was a very good game, but it's also a very important game historically. And I think it would be easier to tackle remaking the original Super Mario Brothers than Mario 64 or Ocarina.
Sure.
Because at least with that, like, you're just slapping a new coat of paint. You're not going to change it dramatically. But like, I think with those two games, to remake them today, like you said, it has to be something more than a coat of paint. Or like, why even bother?
Yeah.
And I think you are having to adjust the controls and adjust some of the dungeons and the interactions. A lot of that game is very sort of blocky and grid like, which would feel awkward today. I mean, they're doing that remake of Tomb Raider. You're not going to do that remake of Tomb Raider and have it still on that strict grid like the original Tomb Raider was.
Yeah, or like the tank controls or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very interested. This is the game I'm really super curious to see more of.
I think the other thing that'll be, interesting, I don't think it changes the game dramatically. They have to give you control of the camera, I imagine, as well. Whereas you don't have you have very limited control of the camera in that original game.
You don't have a second analog stick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you essentially the equivalent of your second analog stick was used for the C buttons.
Right.
And so
we all know how well that worked on a lot of N64 games.
Yeah. And so, I think it'll be very interesting to see what they do. I don't want to be pessimistic because I don't think that's fair. But as somebody who really loves Ocarina of Time, I'm hesitant. I have my reservations. I don't want to be like, oh my God, I think getting overly excited only potentially leads to some disappointment, but I also don't want to bury it before it has a chance to do anything.
Yeah, and I did not do my 100 favorite video games of all time, but like if I was doing a top 10, I think Ocarina would be on there.
Yeah, it's number 2 on my list.
Yeah, and to tackle that, right?
Yeah,
is exciting, but also very. It's not worrisome because if they screw it up, who cares?
Sure. Yeah. At the end of the day.
But like I think the original still exists.
Yeah.
But I think it's very daunting for whatever team they handed that to. Like that's far more daunting of a task than Star Fox.
Yeah.
Or it would be to me.
Or to make a new Zelda game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean they did that. Echoes of Wisdom.
Yeah.
Was that 2D one they did? And like I enjoyed that game quite a bit, but also like. There's almost no pressure on you making that game other than it's a new Zelda game and like you can't completely screw it up, but like you're kind of going in with no expectations.
Yeah. Like I mean, I think to the casual gamer, this is probably going to not make sense, but like, I do think that in terms of like pressure, this is pretty up there with like making Grand Theft Auto 6, just in terms of like Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be the most anticipated like game of all time. It's probably going to be the biggest launch game of all time.
Yeah.
But like in terms of the like cachet of Ocarina of Time, I think that like I don't know if there's any other game that you could say remaking it would be as ambitious of a project.
No,
in terms of
maybe not.
In terms of like historically what it would be.
I mean, I think when they announced what they were doing with Final Fantasy VII, I think that was shocking.
Sure.
In its scope.
I think that's a fair comparison. Yeah.
And I don't think they're doing anything at that scope, right? Like they haven't announced this is going to be 3 different games or something. But
God forbid. Don't do that. Nintendo, do not do that. That's not a challenge.
Well, like one young Link, one adult Link. But like, I think for what Square did with Final Fantasy VII was sort of amazing because it felt like they were just going to go right off the cliff with that.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have at least those first 2 parts, and I assume they will with the 3rd part, they have pretty much nailed doing that.
Yeah.
And making it feel both not a replacement for the original, but like a sort of reinterpretation of the original while paying homage to what made the original so great. Like that's a huge achievement.
Absolutely.
And I think what's worrisome with this is you're taking on something that historically I would argue is more important than Final Fantasy VII. And if you're just going to slap a new coat of paint on it, that's interesting, but like there's so many other questions.
Yeah.
That arise with that.
I mean, we could have a full episode about this because that's like how big it is, but like,
we probably will when the game comes out.
I mean, do they turn this in? Is this like a 30 to 40 hour game now? The original certainly isn't, but half of that game is cutscenes, at least in terms of how long it takes. Maybe it's just because of how many times I've played that game, but
well, and a lot of that game is just, knowing where to go, what to do.
Absolutely.
Like, it's a Zelda game. It's like you have to explore the world and figure it out, right? Which again, like when that game originally came out as a 3D game, one of the first big 3D adventures people had experienced, right? Like that was very intimidating to a lot of people. And now, as you noted, like people are used to much bigger games.
Yeah.
So does it feel very claustrophobic, very small to play it today? Right. And I'm not a very good judge of that because so much of my memory of that game is clouded by my memories of that game. So much of my view of that game. All right. Well, like you said, we could probably talk about the entire rest of the show, but we're going to move on because there's other news, such as PlayStation has announced that they will be ending physical disc starting January 2028. They will produce no more physical disc release for new games. So they clarified that they will continue if there's a game that has been released prior to January of 2028, if they're doing like a second run, a reprint of a game, that they can continue to release disc, but new games will not release on disc starting in January of 2028. So this raises a lot of issues. We'll get one out of the way. Which seems to imply that the PlayStation 6 will not have a disc drive.
I think it's a fair assumption.
We don't know when the PlayStation 6 will be released. Rumors had been fall of next year, so fall of 2027. Because of the issues with tariffs and memory and video cards and all of that, people had speculated they might push the release date for the next gen system a little bit because of the potential costs for a new system. We'll be talking about cost of hardware here in a few minutes as well. But anyways, so a lot of people speculate that seems to imply a PlayStation 6 will not release prior to January of 2028 because they would just want that system to release fully digitally.
Would make sense.
Like you would not release a disc-based PlayStation 6 in November of 2027 and then 2 months later say, we're not releasing any more disc.
No, that would not make any sense.
So it seems to be a pretty clear message. There will be no disc drive on a PlayStation 6. Maybe there's a disc drive sold separately so you can play your old
sure
games,
if it's backwards compatible.
Your 4 and 5,
I
PlayStation
think
4 and 5 games.
That makes sense as well. I mean, they already have that for you can buy the add-on if you have the digital version.
That could potentially happen, though. I wouldn't guarantee that will happen, but it's potential that could happen.
It would be the most consumer-friendly thing they could do.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what they are doing here
is very consumer unfriendly.
Right.
But it feels like the obvious decision, but who knows?
So the bigger issue with no disk drive is what does this mean for consumers, right? So you said very anti-consumer friendly. And, like we have talked about on this podcast that, 80 to 90% of all game sales now are digital. Okay. So some journalists did some digging on that. Those numbers are a little misleading because what that is taking all sales into consideration. And what it does not do is break it down on a per game basis. So, for example, Mina the Hollower released digitally exclusive this summer when it came out. So 100% of its sales are digital because that's the only way to get it. I think eventually they're releasing that.
They're probably a limited run type of thing.
Yeah. But I believe at launch that was completely digital.
Yeah.
Alan Wake 2 was another title that released digitally and then eventually got a disc release.
Baldur's Gate was as well. At least at the beginning, I think it was digital only.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, understandably, those games are 100% their sales are digital. When they start breaking it down on a per game basis, a lot of games start getting closer to a 50-50 or a 60-40 split. So 60 digital, 40
If they
physical.
have a physical release.
Yeah.
Okay.
If they release at launch, at least
Sure.
that way, right? Which starts to sound a little bit more right. Like it's not 100%, one-sided. So I think a lot of people go, well, most people are buying games digitally, so we're going to go this way eventually. I think when we talk about being consumer unfriendly, there's basically two tracks with that. The first one is for preservation. So a lot of people want to have a physical copy of a game because what happens when PlayStation Network shuts down someday? What happens if that game is just no longer for sale and like you want to get a copy of it and they're no longer selling it digitally? Even if you already own it and can play it on your PlayStation, what if you didn't buy it before then, right? So example of that is Cruise and Blast got removed from the Nintendo eStore. That game is only available on the Switch. And if you did not already have a copy of it, you're kind of out of luck unless you track down a physical copy of that game. So preservation is one track with it. The other track, the other concern from people is that a lot of people like to buy physical because you can get games often cheaper physically, either because they're used, they're on clearance, or because you can buy the game and then resell it to buy a different game.
Sure.
Right? So you buy a game at launch at $60, you resell it to GameStop for probably 5 cents, but maybe let's say $30.
Yeah.
I don't know what they actually pay you these days, but like, let's say even if you get $30, that's halfway to another game. And a whole lot of people take advantage of that.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I think about is like, if games are now digital only, what does that mean for people with like not stable internet connections as well, who like,
Sure.
Have to download. It takes me 2 years to download a game because, that's all I can get. And I know like the people who are listening to this will be like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. I think it is a much bigger deal than people give it credit for.
Well, COVID showed that to
yeah.
us, right? Like the number of schools that went remote, and there were kids who were like, I don't have high-speed internet at home, right? Like, or I don't have much internet at all, period, at home. And you may say, well, those aren't the people buying a lot of video games. They may not be buying a lot of video games, but they are probably buying video games. But they may be the people who are buying a system 5 years later.
Yeah.
Right after release. They're buying it at the end of the generation, or they're buying it when the next generation starts. Those are the people buying a PlayStation 4 now. And they were sustaining off of a lot of those used games.
Yeah.
Being able to go and buy GameStop, buy a game for, $10, $15 instead of paying $60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what, and I think the unfortunate thing is like, I can't really be surprised by this decision because this has been the way that it's been trending for ever.
I think one of the arguments that I've heard is, well, this is already the standard on PC, right? PCs, everything's digital. Like you can't buy a physical copy of a PC game anymore. Like even Walmart, if you go over to Walmart and they have some PC games, like they'll have the Diablo treasure chest or something. And I think even now that's just a code in the box, right? It's not a physical disc. Because like, do you own a computer with a CD-ROM drive?
No.
Or Blu-ray drive or whatever it would be? And most people don't anymore, right? So like, what are you going to do? Put a thumbstick in there, a USB thumb drive? And so like, most of the time when you buy a game, even if you're buying a box of it, and that's very rare, all you're getting is a Steam code inside that box to redeem. And that's been the standard for, a decade or more now on computers. And so people have pointed to that and said, okay, well, that hasn't been the end of the world. Sky didn't fall. Like, computer games are more popular than they've ever been. When we talk from a consumer perspective, though, is that if I want to buy a game on my computer, I can buy it on Steam, or I can buy it on the Xbox store, or I can buy it on the Epic Games store, or I might be able to buy it on the Ubisoft store, or, 20 other options of storefronts I can buy it on. Plus, there are lots of resellers.
Yeah, key shops and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's the sort of gray market ones, but then there's the official key shops that, are endorsed and everything. And so I can go buy those games lots of different ways. When this happens, the only way, as far as we know right now, the only way I'll be able to buy a game from my PlayStation is through Sony. Right? And so Sony will control completely the pricing. There won't be Walmart competing with the PlayStation store. There won't be, Amazon competing with the PlayStation store by selling the game for $20 instead of $70 direct.
Sure.
And, I know people go, well, like, PlayStation has lots of sales, lots of time, throughout the year and everything. And they do now, but they do that now because they sort of have to compete with the retail market. And now they're taking the retail market out of consideration. And so does that mean games don't drop in price as quickly or as often as they currently do?
Yeah. Are they like fully leaning into the Nintendo model?
Yeah. But like even Nintendo, right? Like, you can often find games cheaper.
Sure. The
retail
physical copies and all that sort of stuff, used games, certainly.
Yeah. And so I don't know. That presents an interesting problem, right? That presents a really interesting problem for the game industry, because right now, one of the biggest problems with the game industry is the cost of hardware. And if you are getting into the game industry, PlayStation, Xbox have both raised prices. Nintendo is raising it. Is it next month maybe that the price goes up on the Switch too? And so as hardware is getting more expensive, we are now getting fewer options to get games cheap. And so it's making the hobby itself more and more expensive, and potentially putting a larger barrier there for low income people who want to play games, or just kids who don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. But even as an adult, right? Like, is you start to look at it and go, okay, well, is this making it a point where I have to start making hard choices between going to an AEW pay-per-view or buying a new video game?
Yeah.
Where right now, that's not as hard of a choice. I mean, it's always a choice to some degree.
Sure, of course.
But like, maybe you can do both, where as these prices increase, it starts to be, I can do one or the other.
Well, and especially if games are not going on sale or becoming more available at a more reasonable price at the pace they currently have. Like, do I now have to wait 2 years for a game to like go on sale or to drop $20 in price, whereas nowadays it's 6 months? A game that releases at $70 for PlayStation, usually get it for about $50 after 6 months, maybe 8 months.
Right.
If it's now a year and a half, that changes a lot in terms of like, how do I phrase this? Communities around games as well, right? In terms of like how people participate in conversations or engage with other people who are playing those games. And I think that's also pretty significant if PlayStation, I know they're not going as hard as they once were, are also leaning into these games as a service as well. Like, are you handicapping how successful those games can be if they're only available in a certain way, or potentially limiting people's ability to be able to like get them because of how expensive they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to move on because we have some more stories that kind of tie into all of this. Real quick, they announced that Grand Theft Auto 6 will be available digitally only. So they actually announced this before Sony made their announcement. And so it seemed like this was very much a trial balloon to get people used to this idea of games only available digitally. Mm-hmm. So even if you buy Grand Theft Auto 6 retail, it will only be a code in the box. There will be no disc in the box. Mm-hmm. Which is probably trying to get people used to this, and maybe setting an example for what life will be like with the PlayStation 6. Like, one of the questions people have is, will a PlayStation 6 or its games even be available at your local Walmart or Target? Mm-hmm. And it may be that they continue to sell games, but those games that you buy will just be a plastic case with a code inside.
Yeah, or the like gift card looking ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't know what will happen with that. And so Grand Theft Auto is just going to be digital. Mm-hmm. So I guess, their hope is, there have been predictions that game may sell. This sounds insane to me, but there was an analyst out there predicting that game could sell somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 50 million copies in its first week. Which, considering that's not coming out on PC, it's not coming out on Switch, it's just PlayStation and Xbox, sounds insane.
I didn't realize it wasn't coming out on PC.
Not at launch.
Okay.
Which Grand Theft Auto 5 also did not. It was like a year later that it came out on PC. So probably a year from now, we'll get it on PC. But like, that feels like a crazy number. And then when you think, well, that's all digital at full price, and the full price on this is $80, you can kind of see why these companies are leaning into that. Mm-hmm. But that's Grand Theft Auto 6. Most games can't do that.
Yeah, or not. Yeah. That's what I was just saying. I think it genuinely might be the most anticipated game of all time.
Yeah. So that's PlayStation's like horrible, terrible, no good, very bad summer. Fans have been bombarding them on social media. Like, every video that they post onto their YouTube channel has been people like, bring back disc. So I think that's all blown up way more than Sony anticipated. Yeah. But I think Sony making this announcement so early was they did anticipate some blowback.
Sure.
And they're doing this well in advance of
the long game.
Yeah, and announcing it well in advance of the PlayStation 6.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to announce the PlayStation 6 at the same time they announced no physical games.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, could you imagine if on the PlayStation 6 announcement it was just, and it's going to be digital only?
Well, we can imagine, because it's what the Xbox One did. The Xbox One, they didn't announce that there wouldn't be physical games, but they announced that it would have to be connected to the internet. So it was going to have to validate your games once a month or whatever it was. And hey, that blew up. That was a huge disaster for Xbox. Many people still point to that as the reason they lost that console generation following the Xbox 360, where they mostly dominated that generation. So when you look at it from that perspective, like, you don't want this at your announcement.
Yeah.
Xbox has not announced what they're doing, but given their history with Xbox One, a lot of people think they will follow suit with Sony, because why would they not? This is what they always wanted.
Yeah.
And now their biggest competitor's doing it, so what do they have to lose from following? But Xbox has other ways to lose. So they went to Summer Games Fest.
Arguably a worse summer.
Yeah. It's really hard to rank them. But Xbox came out, went to Summer Games Fest, showed off some new games, And then the week after announced that they would be laying off 3,200 employees.
Had like a really good showing as well at Summer Games Fest.
Well, yeah, they had a really good showing because some of those games aren't games that they're ever going to release.
Well, I guess it was like the strongest showing I've seen from Xbox in a long time.
Yeah. But it was smoke and mirrors because what they announced, 3,200 people are getting laid off within the next year. Half of those layoffs they have done as of, I think it was right after the July 4th weekend. It was like coming back from the July 4th weekend. They did 1,600 of those layoffs. As part of that, they have gotten rid of 5 different studios, or in the process of getting rid of 5 different studios. So
can we pause just like thinking about that really quickly? Like, could you imagine just like having that hanging over your head for the next year?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know that like that is just like how it works for a lot of, I mean, I don't know, like to some extent, like if you're non-tenure track, like who knows if you get a contract next year, but like just knowing that there are potentially 1,600 more layoffs coming and just like having to go into work every day regardless would be miserable.
Yeah, I mean, very few jobs are guaranteed.
Yeah.
Right? But very few jobs do you go, 1,600 of you will be gone sometime within the next year, and you never know when it might happen to you.
Yeah.
Might be you. Could be you. Yeah. Could be all of you. Yeah. Right? Like, yes, that's a whole other side to this issue, right? Like that they announced, here, 1,600 of you are gone today. 1,600 of you are gone sometime in the next year, and we're not going to tell you when or how.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully on like an individual level, they are able to give some sort of heads up, but like people can at least like plan out their lives.
Well, this initial 1,600, apparently not.
Yeah.
A lot of those people were not given any sort of heads up.
Yeah. No, I understand that for the first 1,600. I hope for the next 1,600 people's sake that is the case, but
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. Anyways, you're talking about these studios.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that morale at Xbox is pretty low in response to this. And yes, when you hang an axe over people's heads and tell them it could fall on them at any time in the next year, that's pretty bad for morale.
Yeah,
in general. So Double Fine is being spun off. They are going independent. They will retain their IP as part of this. So things like Psychonauts, the franchises that they have created, they will get those, is the understanding of this. Compulsion Games is also being spun off. So they made We Happy Few and then also South of Midnight.
Oh, okay.
So they are also being spun off, also with the idea that they will retain the IP that they have created, right? So Ninja Theory is being sold, though has still not. It's been several weeks now, and still has not been revealed who they are being sold to. Undead Labs is also being sold. They will retain the games. Though in being so, they will retain the games that they are working on, and is my understanding the IP, their original IP at least, that they've created. So as part of that showcase, as you mentioned, Ninja Theory showed off a new game. They showed off a new game in the Sinuous Sacrifice series, the Hellblade series.
Yeah.
This one just called Senua.
Yes.
So they showed off that game, and then it was like less than a week later, they were like, yeah, they're gone. So that's been part of the backlash against this, because you had companies showing off games as part of the Summer Games Fest showcase, and then the implication that some have pointed to is that was that just a marketing ploy to get somebody to buy them? Like, we're going to have you cut a trailer and put it out here, and this is really just to get people excited to buy you. Like, and also there's no guarantee unless there's in the contract of selling it, there's no guarantee that that game then comes to Xbox.
Sure.
Right? Like, so you're showing this to your fans with no guarantee that they'll ever actually get to play this game, which, you know, sometimes games get shown off and then get canceled. But like, this is, you know, you're selling this company in the, you know, the next few months, or in this case, the next week. Arcane is also apparently in talks, but because Arcane is in France, I believe, there are very specific laws about shutting down or firing people. And so they are in negotiations with Microsoft about what's going to happen to that studio, because that France has very strict laws about what you do in a situation like that. So it does seem like Arcane will be gone at some point. We just don't know when or in what form it will be gone. So that's 5 studios that are completely gone out of Microsoft. In addition to that, there were major layoffs at id Software and Bethesda Games, you know, and then various other positions around Microsoft where people were let go. Some in game development. You also have to remember there are people who work at Microsoft doing, you know, PR, marketing, those sorts of jobs. So there were probably cuts in those areas as well that, like, you just never will hear about or see.
Yeah.
You know, unless you work in the industry, I suppose. And then you brought up, I think, you know, the other half of this, which is that there's still 1,600 layoffs coming. And that's a lot of people to lay off, which probably means additional studios might be closed.
Yeah.
Before it's all said and done, or studios gutted in the way that it sounds like id Software was heavily gutted. So, you know, this is not over, and really only halfway over at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been all that familiar with like which studios actually exist or which developers exist within larger companies. You know, I really only know that like some of them I'll know by night, some of them I will know by name, like Double Fine.
Sure,
but otherwise it's usually like what games did they make. But I mean, like these are big studios. I would argue that like. I mean, I don't know if you could say Hellblade is one of Xbox's biggest franchises, but I feel like they promote it like it has been over the last 5 years.
Yeah. They put a lot of hype behind Hellblade too.
Yeah.
In particular. And then when you think about what Ninja Theory has done over the years, I mean, they've made that DMC, like Devil May Cry reboot.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a really, I actually played some of that game. I didn't talk about it earlier, but I played some of that game when this got announced. And I had played that game before, but I was just like, that's a really good game, right? Like, I'm not misremembering. That's like a really good game. And it is. And, you know, I like that first Hellblade. I, you know, wasn't as sold on the second one, but it's a good studio. This is like a good team. You know, Compulsion Games, when you think about, like, these are the people making South of Midnight. Like, that was a good game. Like, you know, has some issues with it, but like they were on the right track with what they were doing.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue with South of Midnight is it just didn't get the like promotion that it needed to be more popular. But like that game checks all of the right boxes.
And it's the sort of game that you think like if you did a part 2, that could be a really big breakthrough.
Sure.
Like the foundation's there, they know what they're doing. If they can just like, you know, fix that formula in some ways, that could be a huge game.
Yeah. And I mean, Double Fine, I think Psychonauts was like nominated for Game of the Year. Psychonauts 2, that is, was nominated for Game of the Year.
Sure.
A handful of years ago. And has put out numerous beloved games.
Yeah, and put out like 2 games in the last year. They put out that Kiln earlier this year and Keeper.
Yes, the Lighthouse game.
Yeah, Keeper. Yeah. They put that out last fall. You know, which both of those games are very much Game Pass games.
Yeah.
Like they're the games that maybe you don't make unless you're working for Microsoft and under the banner of Game Pass, where those games sort of fill out the library, the schedule of Game Pass, right? Because on Game Pass, every game can't be a AAA, $300 million budget game. You have to have some of these singles and doubles and to fill out that lineup, and that's what they were doing in between making maybe a Psychonauts 3 at some point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've not played either the Psychonauts, but I mean, I think the game I've probably played most of theirs was the Brutal Legend, the Jack Black heavy metal fantasy game. And so, yeah, like it's one of those things that their big projects, I think have been like pretty massive successes. And so, I mean, I'm glad to hear that they are able to go independent. Hopefully this will allow them to continue making those projects that, the people there are passionate about.
Yeah, and we should note they were independent before being bought by Microsoft. So I think the issue this just raises is, what is Xbox at this point?
It's just crazy to think that like Xbox went on this massive buying spree of studios,
right?
Like Double Fine, like Bethesda, and now it's
Activision.
Now it's like, hey, we need to cut a lot of these or shutter them or combine them. And I understand that like that is probably just the reality of business, and a lot of people probably saw the writing on the wall when it was happening, but it doesn't mean that it's not, I don't know, disappointing or disheartening when it actually comes to fruition.
Yeah, and they went on that buying spree in part because their strategy was Game Pass. And Game Pass hasn't worked.
Yeah.
I mean, not that it hasn't been a success at any level, but I think the last number they had was around 30 million subscribers for it. And they had put the success level at 70 million. So that's nowhere near.
Sure.
And when you start thinking of it from that perspective, then does Microsoft need all these studios? Well, they do to make Game Pass work in its current form. So does this mean that Game Pass as we know it won't exist in another year or two? Like by the time they launch the next Xbox, is Game Pass a very different product than it is now?
Well, and I guess it's hard to imagine that, because while it may not be a success by their metric, it still feels like maybe the most successful thing they have going for it.
Yeah. But like, I wonder if the future of Game Pass is, well, it's no longer day and date releases of games. Like they've already pulled Call of Duty back. And I wonder, like, looking at this is the like pitch now, well, games will come there 6 months to a year after release.
Sure.
And if you want to play Halo Campaign Evolved, you're having to buy that
the
day
new Gears of War or whatever.
Right, E-Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you having to buy those day one, and, a year from now it'll come out? And I don't know, because their future is so murky right now. And I know we've talked a lot about Xbox, but I think Xbox has been the most fascinating video game company because they're the hardest to like see where they are 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Like Nintendo, particularly now post Switch 2 release, pretty easy to see. PlayStation just told us we're throwing disc out, but like we are going to continue basically on the same.
They still feel pretty stable as a company.
But Xbox is really difficult to predict what the Xbox looks like in 2 years. Like either the hardware or them as a company, right? One of the theories that has popped up around this is, why do you scale down your workforce this dramatically? Why do you cut studios this dramatically? Why do you pare back to only your biggest franchises, which is what this feels like they're doing in a lot of ways? We'll talk a little bit more about that with Fallout and everything. And one of the arguments made is this is what you do when you're wanting to be acquired or you're wanting to sell off, the entire Xbox brand.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, who would buy Xbox?
Yeah.
Like, you would need a massive tech company, most likely, to buy it. Google has already tried and failed in the game industry. Amazon, same way. Apple, people point to, but like this, does Apple want to run a console? Like, this doesn't feel very Apple-like to do this. So then you're running out of people who could afford.
Yeah. I mean, I do wonder about like other big corporations or, other like not necessarily directly connected to tech, but like in the entertainment industry.
Sure.
You're thinking about like somebody like a Disney or something like that. That doesn't really track like immediately, but like I don't also think like it immediately made sense them buying something like Marvel either.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know.
And Disney has been making bigger inroads into games. Like, they made a big investment into Epic.
Sure.
And Epic is working with them to make whatever that Disney metaverse project that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, it would have to be a company of that size and scale, right? Like, you could say private equity, but private equity, if they buy Microsoft, it's going to be to strip it down and sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, to buy Xbox, look, we're not talking about selling Microsoft. We're talking about selling Xbox, right? That division, the hardware and software related to it. But outside of that, like, it doesn't make, there aren't companies that can do that, right? It would have to be somebody at that scale to be able to do that.
I mean, the only other thing I could think would be, I mean, unless it's like Sony, but I don't know why they would want to do that. Like, I guess if the Xbox software has been that successful, but
right. Yeah, like a company like Sony, you feel like they would have no interest in buying the entire Xbox division. They would want to wait until it was scrapped and buy like maybe individual studios.
Just buy Forza or something like that.
Yeah, buy the studio behind Forza. Maybe buy the Halo guys or a couple of the other big marquee franchises you might look into. Like, it leaves the game industry in a very precarious position, I think. When the game industry is better with Microsoft in it.
Yeah.
Like, and you can make an argument about, like, Microsoft is bad, Xbox is bad, but like, having a direct competitor to PlayStation is healthier for the game industry than them not being there. And if they're gone, who fills that void? Nintendo's off doing its own thing.
Especially when we were just talking about with PlayStation going digital only and potentially controlling the prices of their own games, right? Like, having no competitor to that would be kind of like devastating in some ways. If like they really had a monopoly over this type of console, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, your next Resident Evil game. I know the new one came out on Switch too, but like at some point those will not come to Switch. At some point, when the PlayStation 6 Resident Evil, does that backport to the Switch too? Maybe not. So then where do you play that? If you can only play it on PlayStation and PC, PlayStation doesn't have to worry about price negotiation.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about competition at that point if Xbox is out of the market.
Yeah. I mean, I guess Resident Evil, to an extent, like Capcom, I guess, could say like, oh, it's just not going to come to PlayStation, but I don't know why they would do that. If Sony really wanted to like gouge prices.
But like, why would Capcom not gouge the price in that situation?
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, you want to play Resident Evil, you have one console choice. We're going to price it at whatever we want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We'll price it at $80, and yeah, eventually we'll put it on sale, but we don't have to be in as much of a rush to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, along with that, a couple of weeks after these layoffs, Xbox did announce that they are launching Xbox backwards compatibility for the PC. So this is the original Xbox, because we can't call it the Xbox One because they're crazy with their naming scheme. So we'll say the OG Xbox. They have announced 4 titles to start off this with. They are some bangers. We got Blinks the Time Sweeper, Conquer Live and Reloaded, Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge, and Fusion Frenzy. So, they really came out with guns blazing with the first 4 titles they chose here. Some people have sort of mined this emulator on PC because it is software running on a PC, so people can pick it apart much easier than on a console. And they have found that this is basically a version of the emulator that runs their emulation on consoles, and that it is basically also able to emulate Xbox 360 games. So I believe they've already gotten like some Xbox 360 games running up on this emulator and everything. So obviously that would be the next step. You start off with original Xbox games and eventually Xbox 360 games. So all Xbox games are available to play on PC somewhere down the line. Yeah, so, I think this is really cool. I think they chose some interesting games because, Blinks and Conquer and Crimson Skies and Fusion Frenzy are all games that are very much locked to that, to those generations. And they were not available to play anywhere else. It's not like Halo that has been ported as part of the Master Chief Collection, and you can play that on Steam already and that sort of thing. These were games that you could only play on the original Xbox. I would argue some of these games are good. At least Crimson Skies is good. Blinks is
Fusion Frenzy. I mean, maybe there's a lot of nostalgia there, but like it's a party game. It can't be that bad.
It was their attempt at a Mario Party game.
Yeah.
It is one of those games that makes you appreciate Mario Party and how much better those games are than you probably give them credit for. But no, it's not a terrible game. Like, it is a playable game.
Of the games in that genre, it's up higher, closer to Mario Party than the bottom.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And so I think the thing that's really, this is obviously interesting. You can go buy these games right now through the Xbox store on PC, download them, start playing them. I think that what's really interesting about this is what it says to us about the next generation Xbox. And one of the big questions about that has been, well, how is that system going to be sort of subdivided, right? So they've already sort of said this is going to be much more like a PC. It's been heavily, I always forget like how clear they have been on it, but it's been heavily hinted you're going to be able to install third-party stores. So like potentially the Steam store or the Epic Games store on there. So one of the questions has been, and we've talked about it on this podcast, like, is that system going to boot up and you're going to have to choose Xbox mode or Windows PC mode?
Yes, I think we talked about it similar to like the Steam Deck, right? But for the console.
And one of the arguments has been, okay, well, they're going to have a Xbox mode that boots into the Xbox OS and is going to have some sort of specialized hardware in order to play these old games, right? And now with this, the idea that you can play any old Xbox game on a PC in Windows seems to imply there will be no dedicated Xbox mode, that it will just be even more of a just straight Windows machine. Now, I don't think it's going to have where you can boot directly into Windows. I think it's going to be, like their handhelds, where it's going to be a very streamlined big picture sort of mode and everything. But like Windows will be running in the background and all the games will play through that, right? Either natively in the case of more modern games or through emulation when it comes to these older Xbox and 360 titles. And, that also gets a step closer to the idea of Xbox as a piece of hardware is more of a schematic and less of a distinct box that you have to buy.
Sure.
So the idea that you could just go buy a brand new computer and install the Xbox software and plug it into your TV, and it would basically function the same as an Xbox that you buy in a store. I think that seems to be where Xbox is wanting to go. That's where they're going with their handhelds. The ROG Ally X that they've put out.
The whole mentality of everything's an Xbox.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe gets us closer to this idea that, what Valve is trying to do with the Steam machine, where like they might release a base Xbox model, but then you could also buy an Xbox model made by Dell or Alienware. I know that's the same company, but one of these PC manufacturers,
Razer or something like that.
Yeah. And this seems to lean more in that direction.
Sure.
Like instead of the Xbox being bespoke hardware, it is just hardware running software.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we'll get into. I think that's the future of the Xbox. Like this seems the most clear way that they've stated this. We've said on this podcast, like we wonder if this is where they'll go. Seems to be them just announcing, yes, this is exactly where we're going with this. Speaking of Valve, they released the Steam machine this summer. We had not heard official prices before we went on hiatus. They announced it, released it, and you can go buy one right now, or at least get in line to buy one. The 512 gigabyte model came out at $1,050, and the 2 terabyte model is $1,350. Mario, any interest in buying a Steam machine at these prices?
No, I will likely be passing on a Steam machine.
Yeah, I mean,
considering I don't see it functioning all that different from my PC to begin with.
Sure. I mean, but it's in a cute box that sits under your TV conveniently.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, these prices are crazy. We should note that, like we mentioned earlier, with all hardware prices, these are astronomical for a variety of reasons. Tariffs are one reason. So anybody who's importing hardware from particular countries, there are different tariffs. Those tariffs seem to be changing and shifting on a daily basis. That drives up the prices. There is also the AI crunch on RAM, hard drives, and even video cards. And so that has driven up the price in producing and acquiring those. So, you know, I think you said you read an interview on IGN where they said the original intent was more in the $700 range.
Well, that was sort of the math that IGN did. I believe the Valve representatives didn't give an exact number. Okay. They said that the price increase was similar to that of the Steam Deck's price increase, and IGN mathed it out that was about a 30% increase, and so they said it's reasonable to believe then that maybe this was supposed to, or initially the initial plan was to launch this around 750, at least the lower tier one.
Yeah, so like this positions this now as the most expensive, let's say, console that you can buy. It's not a console, but like it is a consoleized version of Steam, right? Of the PC gaming experience. I think these prices are crazy, and I can't imagine recommending anyone to pay this. You can buy a PlayStation 5 Pro for $900 brand new now, and that is a more powerful piece of hardware than these Steam machines are. However, I will say the PlayStation 6, when it releases in another year and a half, 2 years, whenever it comes out, or even the next generation Xbox, they are almost certainly going to be above $900.
Yeah.
Because none of these issues with tariffs or with the RAM crisis and all this, none of that's going to get cleared up in the next year. And even if it were to get cleared up in the next year, prices will not drop overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So we are looking at systems. Next generation hardware is almost certainly going to launch at or above $1,000.
Yeah, I'd say it'd be hard to imagine anything below $999.
When you start thinking of from that perspective, you start thinking of a Steam machine next to a PlayStation 6, say, on the shelf, then all of a sudden they're about the same price.
Yeah.
Then you have to start thinking about, okay, the one advantage that a console, not the only advantage, but one of the big advantages, it can fit under the television, and I can go to Walmart and buy a game and pop it in there. And PlayStation just took that away. Mm-hmm. To me, that brings a Steam machine and a PlayStation 6 much more in line with each other.
Sure.
And the PlayStation 6 hardware will probably be more powerful than this, I assume. It almost will have to be. But does the average person really care? Like, the Steam machine can't run all your games at 4K, but it can run a lot of them at like 1440p. And does the average person will they actually notice that difference? Will they actually care? Or will they see, hey, the games I already have on Steam from my computer, or, my friend tells me Steam has these great sales and I can get games for $4. Will that push a lot of people towards this Steam machine or whatever the successor to it is, the next iteration of its hardware?
Yeah.
And I start to see like this as less ridiculous in that sort of scenario.
I think that's very fair. Absolutely. Like, completely reasonable to like speculate out like that. 'Cause like I was already thinking I'm not even necessarily connected to like the physical discs or anything that we've talked about today, of just like, how likely am I to get, if the PlayStation 6 was announced tomorrow,
right,
and even if they said it's coming out in 2028,
right,
as of this point right now, I'm not like, oh, I'm definitely getting that.
right.
As compared to how I felt for the PlayStation 5,
right,
or even like the Switch 2. Like, those felt like, no, 100%, I'm definitely getting those. A PlayStation 6 at this point in time is like maybe at some point.
Right.
But there's nothing that I'm not motivated to go get a new console. I feel like the PC that I have checks the majority of them. I barely play the PlayStation 5 that I have now. I play my PlayStation 3 more than I play my PlayStation 5.
Yeah, and I think part of what I have the same reaction. And part of how I look at the situation is, okay, so like, I don't think I ever buy another Xbox.
I think, yeah.
As long as they're porting their games to PC, I can play those on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
So I start looking at the PlayStation, and almost every third-party game, with maybe the occasional exception, comes to PC now, right? So what am I buying a PlayStation for? Well, I'm buying it for the Sony-developed exclusives, of which how many are there a year at this point?
Well, that's what I was even thinking. Like, how many of the Sony exclusives do I genuinely care about? And I think at this point in time, it's really just God of War. Yeah. And even that, like, I think I would be okay without. You know, I think there was a period of time, like, considering, like, I wrote my master's thesis on it, and I at one point felt very connected to that series. And, like, I know we're going to talk about the new one here in a bit. Like, I have every intention. I will almost certainly buy the Leifei game. It's okay. I think it's one of the. I don't think there's anything on PlayStation that I'm like, I really need to have that. Right. Because, like, it's other biggest franchises I don't play anyways. I've never played The Last of Us.
Right.
You
should.
Sure. That's like, and I'll say, like, that's a me thing. Like, that's not like any sort of resistance to the franchises. But I feel like if I've gone this long without playing it, or like any of the other big franchises that they have, I think it would be silly for me to like let FOMO really guide a decision of buying a $1,100 console for a small handful of games.
Well, and I think you compare that to Nintendo, right? And Nintendo has put out a first-party exclusive release every month this year, just about. If not, it's going to end up very close, like 11 or 10 months out of the year they have. You know, there's Pocopia, there's Star Fox, there's Tomodachi Life. Like, they may not all be games you're interested in, but every month there's something.
And I think that's like, even if there's 3 of them, like, I think about, like, even if this year, maybe not even 3 of them, even if this year all I get of the Nintendo exclusives are Pocopia and Ocarina of Time, I think it's worth it.
Because at least there's something like Star Fox there that interests you.
Sure. Or, you know, and I'll probably get the Fire Emblem game. Yeah. So, you know, that's good enough for me.
And you might not buy Star Fox at launch, but, like, that's a game you put on your wish list, and you're like, hey, maybe when it goes on sale some point, maybe, you know, I'm just bored one day and I'll pick that up because I'm at least interested in it in some form.
I mean, that's how I still feel about Metroid Prime 4, regardless of like the middling reviews that it's gotten.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Or
Luigi's Mansion 3. I know that's a Switch 1 game, but still, like,
that's a really good game.
They will almost inevitably come out with another one.
Yeah. You should play Luigi's Mansion 3. That's a really good game. I'm a little more hesitant on Metroid Prime 4, even though I think that's pretty good. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the reviews were. So, like, and then I compare that to PlayStation 5, right? Yeah. And I look at what am I interested in this year that I can't play somewhere else. If that was my only console, lots of games. You know, there was Resident Evil and you know, Pragmata and like tons of games that have come out this year. If that was my only console, right? But I have a gaming PC, and like, it's not top of the line, but it's a pretty powerful system. You know, it's a couple years old or whatever at this point. And you know, I look at what are the exclusives, and it's that Wolverine game, and that's not for everyone. Yeah. And, you know, Saros. And that's really been, like, unless I'm just forgetting something, that's been it this year. And then when I look back at last year, it's like 1 or maybe 2 games. And that used to be doable when the hardware was $300. Yeah. But when the hardware's pushing $1,000, it's hard to invest in that for 1 or 2 games a year I might play.
I mean, I guess you could sort of put like Grand Theft Auto 6 into that category, because like it is essentially a console exclusive, at least for a year.
Right.
But still.
Yeah, but like that's not a PlayStation exclusive. That's coming to Xbox as well, right? So
I guess I'm saying like if in this world where this hypothetical world where Xbox no longer exists.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. If I only had a PC, right?
Yes.
Like as my other option. But I mean that's the issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that worth $1,000? And in that hypothetical world, is Grand Theft Auto launching exclusively only on PlayStation?
Sure.
Or at that point, do they bite the bullet and go, we've got to launch on PC as well?
Yeah.
Like, we can't give that much control over to Sony. Like, it's not worth it financially for us, as Take-Two, Rockstar. How do they feel on that? But I think that's where I'm getting more and more looking at these consoles. Like, I don't think I'll ever buy another Xbox. I can't imagine what they would do that would get me to buy one, short of just saying we're not putting our games on PC anymore, but I can't imagine Microsoft doing that. And I just looking forward, I love Astrobot, but if Astrobot's going to cost me $1,000 to play, like you said, I think I can do without.
All right. There's a couple that we missed. There's the new Marvel fighting game. That's a PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah, but is that coming to PC as well?
I don't. As of right now, it is a PlayStation exclusive, and I was just looking at it. Hold, please.
Reload page.
Phantom Blade Zero.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that game does nothing for me, but I know it does for some people. So, I mean, I'm not saying there's no games coming out.
Yeah. I'm just figured we were talking about it, so.
And I'm really just thinking, what are the games that have interested me? And that Tokum fighting, Marvel Tokum fighting, that's a cool looking game. I'm never buying that game at launch.
Sure.
That's the sort of game I might pick up, 2 years from now at $20 just because I will get some enjoyment out of playing that.
It's not a game I'll almost ever get because I'm not a fighting game person. So. But like I said, I know there are certain people who are extremely excited about that game. I think it comes out they just released the demo or the beta or something yesterday, 2 days ago. I think it's early August that it comes out.
Yeah. And which
I guess is next week.
That's a potential hardware mover, but how many of those are there, and how many of those connect? When you're only getting a few of those, and a lot of those aren't first party. Yeah. They're not controlled by Sony,
and most of those, I would argue, are also. How many of those exist before the actual game comes out, right? Because I don't think anybody would have seen Astrobot and been like, oh, I got to get a PlayStation 5 for that.
Right.
It's after the fact, after it wins Game of the Year, after people say this is one of the best games, then okay, well, maybe, right?
Right.
But I don't think there are that many games that before it comes out are motivating people to actually buy a console. Grand Theft Auto 6 is certainly one of them.
Right.
A new God of War, but probably. But that's and a new Last of Us will almost certainly be the case. But I don't think there's that many that actually move the needle that much.
No, Sony doesn't have those franchises anymore. They've neglected them.
Yeah.
And Xbox doesn't either.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but part of Xbox's summer showcase was them going, hey, we're going to take some of our games and make them Xbox exclusive again, right? The new Gears of War E-Day. That's going to be Xbox and PC exclusive. They've announced it's not coming to PlayStation anymore, even though they put out a trailer with PlayStation on it and then had to remove the trailer. But, okay, that's coming to PC. So if I want to play that, I'll play it on PC. But is anyone buying an Xbox to play the new Gears of War? I wouldn't, even though I have some interest in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But that game alone is not enough to move hardware for me.
Yeah.
And even if it were, how many franchises does Xbox have of that level? And it's Halo, it's Forza.
Mm-hmm.
I guess with Bethesda, you could say Fallout, but Fallout's not an exclusive anyway. Yeah. They've been putting that everywhere.
Elder Scrolls
Right.
But I think same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls 6 was announced however many years ago at this point.
Yeah, but that will almost, surely come to PC.
Yeah.
Like they're not going
to PC as well. Yeah. Sure.
And Call of Duty, but like they're still under contract. They have to keep putting that on PlayStation for the next 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem. And, say what you want about Nintendo. Nintendo has those franchises.
Yeah. There are multiple franchises that would get me to buy a new Nintendo console.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who buy a new Nintendo just for Smash.
Sure. Yeah.
Like there were a lot of people who bought a Switch just to play Animal Crossing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll put it this way, some of those franchises aren't even the ones I would get. That would do it for me, right? Like for me, it would be Zelda, Mario. I'm blanking on whatever other ones I just had in my head, but like even if it's just those two,
Kirby, Metroid, like some of those maybe.
But like Animal Crossing is going to do that for some people. Xenoblade would probably do that for some people.
Oh yeah. Nintendo summer show was filled with Xenoblade stuff, right? Like
Fire Emblem, like
yep.
You could come up with many, and I don't know how many for that. And like I said, even if not all of those are for me or for anybody that's listening to this, I don't think you could deny the fact. Whereas I don't think of Saros as moving consoles. Maybe on the success of Returnal.
Right.
Like it did for some people, but
no, I don't think that game moved a lot of hardware.
Saros is not the Legend of Zelda. I don't think that's a hot take.
No, and like you're trying to build new franchises, that's fine. You can take those swings and stuff, but like,
and it seems like I think that game is done really well.
Yeah, but like there was a time, as we were talking about earlier in this show, with Twisted Metal, that was a franchise that moved hardware.
Sure.
Right? And they have abandoned so many of those franchises. And I get some of those have aged out. Some of those wouldn't move hardware today. But it's just hard to look at them and say, what are the games that are going to make people buy?
Yeah. And I think you still have like Ratchet and Clank. There was a PS5 game for that.
Right.
Sackboy, I think also had that PS5.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was only PS5, but
I think so.
So like they do exist, but we haven't heard anything about them in 5 years, right?
Well, I mean, we're not getting a new Ratchet and Clank because we're getting Wolverine.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Right. And then they're making an X-Men game, and they're probably making another Spider-Man game. Mm-hmm. And so where does Ratchet and Clank even fit in there? And I say that as somebody who loves Ratchet and Clank.
That's Insomniac, is that right? Yeah.
Do they even have time to make another one of those? But I mean, they have franchises like
the Ghost series, Ghost of Yotei, Ghost of Tsushima. They're going to make another one of those.
But they're making those. And so instead of making,
Sly Cooper.
Yeah. Or the superhero franchise,
Injustice.
Not Injustice. That's the right direction with the name, but Injustice is
that's Marvel or DC
fighting game series. Yeah. Anyways, in that part of the problem is that video games now are taking 5-6 years to develop, and so we've talked about before. Naughty Dog has not released an original game.
Infamous.
They make the Infamous games. Yeah, that was it. But Naughty Dog has not released an original game for this entire console generation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a chance that outer space game of theirs doesn't come out on the PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like that game doesn't hit until the PlayStation 6.
Yeah.
I know they've already announced it and everything, but like I don't feel like that game's coming out in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point you're getting awfully close to PlayStation 6 release.
Yeah. It might be one of those like hybrid releases.
Right. But like when you start looking at things like that, you go,
or even sorry, I'm cutting you off. Sony would say, why don't you hold that for the PlayStation 6 so that, because that'll move consoles.
Right. Like we need a big exclusive.
Yeah.
But that means we haven't got a new Last of Us. They did those remakes. And we haven't got a new Uncharted. You know, we haven't got a new, you know, we're just not getting these games on a regular clip. And so it means some of these franchises have just died on the vine.
Yep.
And like, I don't blame anybody directly for that, but like, I think it makes it a harder sell to get a lot of people to buy the hardware.
Yeah.
Like if you were giving me, you know, still 2 or 3 Uncharted's a console generation, that's a much better sales point, you know, to buy this new hardware. If you were giving me, you know, 2 Last of Us within a console generation, that's a much better sales point, but there's no chance we're getting that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Nintendo often will only give us 1 per franchise, you know, for a piece of hardware, but they have so many franchises. You know, you may only get 1 3D Mario, but then you're getting, you know, you're getting Super Mario 3D World.
Sure.
Also, and then you're also getting Luigi's Mansion.
You know,
and you're
or Smash. Or I mean, we got 3 Zeldas on the Switch.
Right. Yeah.
So,
which was crazy.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, that's because they had the main Zelda franchise, and then they were willing to do those smaller games.
And that's not actually 4 if you include the Link's Awakening remake as well.
Yeah. But like 3 original games, right? Yeah, like Sony can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and part of that is that games have gotten too big, too expensive. Development time takes too long. But it's really, I think we're starting to see that sort of come home to roost and be a significant problem as they try to sell exclusive hardware. Whereas Nintendo, at least for now, is doing extremely well at pacing out consistent releases, and they may not all be of interest to you, but something is going to hit.
Yeah.
Or as you said, 2 or 3 things are going to hit at least.
Which is at that point the same as Sony. But like for Sony, if they have 2 or 3, maybe it's a 1 that you connect with. Whereas at least with Nintendo, if it's 10 or 11 and you get 3 or 4, that's good enough for me. 1 per quarter is pretty solid.
Yeah. And most people aren't buying as many games as you and I do.
Yeah.
Right. We're doing a video game podcast. We buy and play more games. A lot of people are only buying a few games a year.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on because we've still got a few other things to get through here. You mentioned the new God of War. Is it, how's it pronounced?
Leife.
Leife? Okay. I was not entirely sure on, even though I've heard the name said in game, I just could not remember how to say it. So they announced that at the Summer Games Fest, and then they just very recently put out a firm release date for that because honestly, when they announced that, I kind of thought that doesn't look like a game that's coming out until fall of 2027.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost entirely a cinematic trailer that we got. I mean, they had some gameplay in it, but it was like...
It was a very guided gameplay.
This is the who knows if this actually makes it into the game,
right?
Or at least some of this, we're just like showing off. This is like a tech demo.
Right. I mean, they were pitching it as this is actual gameplay, but that looked like very guided gameplay where you do not step off to the left because it might crash the demo.
Yeah.
And that's to say nothing bad about the game, but just to say it didn't sell me on the idea that the game itself was anywhere near completion. So they announced that it's coming out February 16th of 2027. So, you know, it may still miss that release date, but
7 months away.
Yeah, but like, you know, that's a much earlier release date than I was expecting. I was expecting fall of 27 at the earliest.
Yeah.
They also announced that it will directly connect to the next God of War story. So the next, I guess this is being viewed very much as kind of like a spin-off,
interlude,
a side story, so to speak. And that it is going to connect directly to the next mainline God of War game, which of course we have no idea when that will come. That will almost certainly be a PlayStation 6 title.
Yeah.
So you, just quickly, because you are a big fan of this franchise, like, how do you feel about this game given what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I watched the trailer. For me, a lot of those trailers are sort of like, okay, cool. Like, if they just put out a list, here's all the stuff that we're planning on coming out, I think my hype would be about the same. I didn't watch that and be like, oh my God. I watched it and I was like, yeah, that looks like a God of War game. Cool. That's good enough for me.
You weren't excited by the gelatinous cube?
No, I'm not anti woman in a video game. I guess I'm going to make that clear as well. I have no issues.
Is that why you're not excited, Mario?
That's exactly why.
You can't stand playing as a woman?
No, I mean, I'm actually, in some ways, I think that makes me more excited. I love Kratos. I think Kratos is a great character, but I think to get to see a new character, but that still obviously is so intimately connected to the story we've already seen.
Sure.
That I think is very cool. I think the stuff that they're playing with like this afterlife of all the mixture of like the different mythologies, I think is potentially very interesting as well.
That was the most interesting thing in that trailer to me.
I think that there's a way that could be like a real cluster, but I think that there's a way that they could do some really cool stuff with that. You know, the big assumption or speculation is that the next series will be like Egyptian mythology. That was reinforced by what's his name? Christopher Judge wearing like the Eye of Horus like chain at I assume it was San Diego Comic-Con this past weekend.
Okay, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
Did he give a 40-minute speech about it?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I think this game, I don't know if this is like a day one purchase for me necessarily, but I feel very confident that almost certainly I will buy it at some point. Unlike the 2D one that came out, like there's a part of me that is still very interested in it, but this one, it's almost a guarantee that I'll get it at some point.
Yeah, I think
at this point in time, there's also very few day one purchases for me.
I think the only criticism I would have against what they showed of that game is I don't think anything in that trailer moves the needle for someone who's not already a fan.
I think that's fair.
So I think like you are selling that game entirely to people who are already fans of God of War.
Sure.
And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think like if you're doing a sort of side story or spinoff, that's your opportunity to sort of bring in new fans.
Yeah.
And nothing about the gameplay or anything really made me feel that way.
Sure.
But, you know, that's also a fair criticism. Like Spider-Man 2 did nothing really to make me think somebody who didn't like Spider-Man 1 is going to be interested.
Yeah. And it's also the very first trailer, right? Like we will definitely see more about this game as it gets closer. But yeah, like I of all the PlayStation stuff, this is the one that I'm like, it's at the top of my list of anything that's coming out for PlayStation.
Sure. Let's see. Bethesda has confirmed that Fallout 5 is in very early development. Obviously, that will be a release post the next Elder Scrolls 6, I believe is what we're up to. They also announced that Obsidian is working on another Fallout title, though they did not state exactly what it is. The rumor for a long time has been that they might do a New Vegas 2, something tying into that because they did the original New Vegas. They also announced that they are doing remasters of Fallout 3 and New Vegas. That makes just a lot of sense because those are popular games. That allows them to put something out there that will be for sale to people who are watching the Amazon series, which has been incredibly popular of Fallout. But also that makes a whole lot of sense when you start thinking if Obsidian is doing a New Vegas 2, then you want some updated way for people to play New Vegas.
Sure.
As part of that. So those might end up working together in some way. Let's see. Speaking of God of War, the series that they're currently shooting for that is recasting the lead. Ryan Hurst, who was playing the lead of Kratos, tore his bicep on set, doing some of the action scenes. That will most likely put him out of being able to film for the next year, both because of surgery and recovery of how long it takes post-surgery for that. So they're going to recast him, and then as part of that, they're going to have to refilm the 4 episodes that they have already done, in part to obviously replace him as Kratos, but also because the kid is going to look out of age because he's a kid and he's growing so quickly and aging. So they are going to just have to completely scrap those and reshoot them. With both of the lead actors. So that's incredibly disappointing for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that sucks. And
especially as a lead role. I don't know the last time he had a major lead role. It's kind of always been that secondary character. I mean, I think he was in the Odyssey, but in a very small role.
Sons of Anarchy.
Exactly. So for him to have this top billing role would have been pretty cool. I mean, not just personally, but obviously for his career as well.
Sure.
And, but aside the fact from the injury, and wish him well in all his recovery and stuff like that. But, so it's definitely disappointing. It'll be interesting to see who they choose to replace him with.
I believe that show is being made by Amazon.
That sounds correct.
And you would hope that they would maybe be like, hey, let's see if we can find some way to, I'm sure they have to pay him.
I would think so.
But maybe can we work with getting you into something else?
That would be pretty cool.
Even if a second season of God of War, maybe he can come back playing a different character, right? There's certainly lots of mythical characters he could step into the shoes of. The last thing here real quick is they released a full trailer for the Resident Evil film. This is the one that's being directed by Zach Krieger, who did Weapons and Barbarian. So Weapons, one of the biggest critically acclaimed, not just horror films of recent years, but one of the most critically acclaimed films at all of last year.
Weapons, you said, right?
Yeah. I think I said Weapons, right?
You did. I was looking at a thing, and so I was I think that's what he said. But
so he is directing this film, and they'd put out a trailer or the teaser. It didn't really show a whole lot. This full trailer shows a lot more. He has been out there doing interviews about it. One of the things he said was, "This is not an adaptation of any of the games. It is set at least around or in part in Raccoon City." That's, noted in the trailer. And that he's really going for more a vibe of what does it feel like to play one of these games. He says he's a real big fan of the games, but he didn't think it made sense to adapt the games themselves. So it's really much more about telling a side story within that universe so that the events of the original game are happening sort of in the background surrounding this, but he's going to tell a separate story and what does it sort of feel like to be that player in that game. So one of the things that this shows you is you get a shotgun and the character is searching for ammo through the house for the shotgun shells and everything. And you're like, okay, that's clever. You can't do the entire thing that way, but how do you convey that sort of sense of being alone in an unfolding nightmare? And I'm not a very big fan of that original series of Resident Evil films. I think that first film is okay, but they get progressively worse, I feel, as they go along. And I don't feel like they've ever done this series justice. I'm not convinced this is the right way, but I will say that he, as a director, is one of the best horror directors working right now.
Well, and it makes sense because, there's just nobody hot enough to actually play Leon Kennedy.
Fair. I'm sure there have been meetings Ryan Gosling, will you play Leon Kennedy? And he's like, no, that seems a bad idea. I'm going to go play Ghost Rider instead. I'm going to try to follow in the footsteps of Nicolas Cage, because surely that'll go well for me. Yeah, so that does it for the news. Let's wrap this up with our big question, and we've kind of danced around this given all the news we've been talking about, but our big question is, how do you feel about the health of the game industry after this summer? So we talked about a lot of bad news coming out of the game industry this summer. There's been a lot of people going, is this the death of video games? Is this the death of the industry? How are you feeling right now about the health of this industry and, just the hobby more in general?
I don't know. I mean, it's not going to die. Like that, I think is a bit of a overreaction. I do think it's becoming more inaccessible, or I guess to put it this way, I do wonder if it will become more niche of a hobby or of an interest as it becomes more expensive to get into. Or it's one of those things, you think about certain hobbies, I use like Magic the Gathering for an example, where it's just like, if you haven't already gotten into it, it's going to become more and more difficult to get into it. That is, I think, a pessimistic view. I think it's reasonable.
Sure.
But I also, I don't know. I guess my feeling is that is also for a certain side of gaming. I think that there's also like the indie space of like PC gaming where you don't need a big bulky PC to play all of the Stardew Valleys of the world, or all these, the Mina the Hollowers doesn't require something massive to play.
Doesn't require cutting edge hardware.
Exactly.
Celeste.
Yeah.
Those sort of things.
And so it's like, I think that the mainstream AAA side of games is in a very weird spot, but I think that that's a small fraction of what the industry actually is. So I think, I'm still hopeful, but I do think that it's in a kind of in a holding position. As like somebody that engages as a fan, there is definitely sort of this holding position. What we were talking about of like, I don't know the next console that I get might be the next Nintendo console, and that's 5-6 years away, maybe at the earliest. So,
right. Sure.
So yeah. How about you?
Yeah, anytime something bad happens in the game industry, you have the Chicken Littles, the sky is falling. They look at this is 1983 all over again. The video game market's going to crash, and one of the things historically that's important is that when the video game market crashed, the home market crashed. PCs, didn't notice it. Mm-hmm. The arcades didn't notice it, right? So if you were only playing games in arcades or you were only playing games on PC, you didn't even notice that happened.
Yeah.
Really. And I feel like that's probably, that reality of the console market is probably closer to what we're at right now than, some doomsday or Armageddon sort of situation and everything. That we might be in a situation where there's going to be some sort of constriction, but that depending on where you're playing games, you might not ever notice that it happens. And I think that's in part because games are so diverse now, and they're played in such a diversity of places and a diversity of ways that, right now it is entirely possible that you could be playing games and be completely unaware of lots of trends going on in other areas of the game industry.
I guess I say this as well. It's hard to be that pessimistic about games when, as we talked about earlier today, there's a game in Grand Theft Auto 6 that is about to come out within the next handful of months, supposedly, that is expected to potentially make $50 million in its first week.
No, sell 50 million copies.
50 million copies, excuse me.
Yeah, make billions this first week.
Like, I understand that is an exception.
Sure.
Maybe the biggest exception.
Yeah.
But I don't, like I said, I also think that like you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about the health of the industry as well. We are maybe going to see the biggest launch of any game ever.
Right. Well, and I think looking ahead, what I see is, okay, well, mobile gaming, right? Mm-hmm. That's not going away.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's where I thought you were going to go when you were talking about the stats that said 90% of games were digital. Well, yeah, it's because every phone game is digital. I don't know if that is included in those stats, but.
Well, I think that's just on PlayStation.
Okay.
But like, yeah, I mean, you talk about people being used to buying games digitally.
Yeah.
Every game you buy on your phone is digital, right? Like there's no hardware that you're buying. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the game industry. There are people who are playing games on mobile, and that's the way they're playing games. If Sony left the game market tomorrow, would that affect them in any way?
My mom is still going to be playing the Wordle and the other New York Times games.
Right. But there's going to be a whole lot of kids still playing Roblox.
Yeah.
And,
Fortnite and all those games.
Yeah. Clash of Clans and all of that stuff. And so, and then when you look at the PC, you look at Steam. If Sony went away tomorrow, they're already taking their games off of PC or not releasing any new ones onto PC. Would that affect Steam in any way? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
Like Steam would go on. Like, would PlayStation disappearing, would that hurt, like, say, Capcom, because a significant portion of their sales are on there, so they're selling fewer copies of Resident Evil, Pragmata, whatever.
I think it would negatively impact the game industry. Like, I think that's an easy thing to say, but the health of the game industry, or I guess I say the game industry in general is far more robust than Xbox and PlayStation.
And so, yes, I think that would have a negative impact, but then I also just wonder, does that market, maybe not overnight, but eventually does that market sort of reproportion itself? I think we're already at a point where you're seeing, Resident Evil Requiem this year and Pragmata. Those were two big AAA releases, and they did ports to the Switch too. And by all accounts, those are pretty good ports. Those are pretty good ways to play those games if that's your really only option to play them. And are we already headed, just because of the cost of development of games, where Switch 2 is the baseline? Instead of developing for the most high-end hardware, do you develop on on Switch 2 and then like sort of upscale your games?
Sure.
Like, I don't mean upscale hardware-wise. I mean, do you then go back and go, okay, well, we can on PlayStation run this in 4K.
Performance mode and stuff like that.
Yeah. Can we like punch it up a little bit? And so, I think like, well, what would happen if Sony and Microsoft disappeared tomorrow? Well, a lot of the development would just recenter on Switch. And something like a Steam machine would get like nitro fueled overnight of people adopting and buying those. And so, I think it's a bad situation that we're in, because I think when I look at Xbox, I don't see how it gets out of this spiral, and I think that means a lot of job losses, and I think that's not just sad for the people affected, but I think that hurts the game industry as a whole. I don't think Sony's going away anytime soon. We're going to get a PlayStation 6. That's going to be a very popular console, I think, regardless of the price. But I do start to see where the need for a traditional console with a lot of power consolidated behind it is less and less important. And as games are played in more, like I said, more diverse places, more diverse type of games, more of those $20 indie games that can run anywhere. You know, even if you have a 5-year-old iPhone, can run that game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they're still putting out ports onto Switch 1 because the Switch 1 is still powerful enough to play this game. I think in those situations, you start to go, okay, well, the game industry might be in for some upheaval, but like it's not in dire straits. I don't think the game industry isn't
even close.
Yeah, it's not as in dire straits as, say, the movie theater industry.
Mm.
And I don't even think, I think a lot of that's, you know, overblown, but like it's certainly a more precarious position right now than the game industry is. So, you know, like it's not all like roses in the game industry, but it's certainly not on its last legs by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, that does it for this episode. We've got a few weeks before we are fully back full time into the school year and everything. We will probably try to do one more episode before then. I think that's the 17th that school classes start. We will probably try to squeeze in one more episode. So we are probably not back to officially on a weekly rotation yet. But we might be like bi-weekly at this point, every couple of weeks, getting an episode until school starts back. But we will be back soon, hopefully with a new episode. And then once we get into the school year, hopefully falling more into that weekly routine of putting out episodes. But we thank you for listening. As always, you can check out back episodes and additional content that's up on our website at salukigames.com. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you, Mario, for joining me. Until next time, play something fun, take care of yourself, and we'll be back soon with another episode.